It all kicks off in a chaotic scene, where Fang Yuan's name echoes aggressively through the gloomy air. Banged up and bloody, our MC hears his enemies demanding he hand over the spring-autumn cicada in exchange for a quick and painless end. Right then, the attackers inform him that all the righteous factions have teamed up to crush his demonic den and order him to stop resisting immediately. Faced with his refusal, a man attacks with flames, accusing the target of wiping out thousands of people just to refine that cursed item. A woman controlling lightning also lunges forward, filled with hatred because he'd stolen her purity 300 years ago and exterminated her entire family with his own hands. Despite their furious promises about his demise, the guy remains firm and silent in the middle of all the destruction. With that, the warriors from the factions unleash their magic spells simultaneously at full power, right at him. Fang Yuan's reaction is to handle the ambush with cold calculation, facing the imminent danger with an absurd level of calm. 6 hours of an extremely draining confrontation pass as the siege remains tight. Then, one of the opponents tries a direct charge, annoyed by the enemy's stubbornness and persistence. Instead of fighting back aggressively, the protagonist simply begins to recite a contemplative poem about the passing of time and the seasons. And he concludes his philosophical reflection by declaring that, in the end, absolutely nothing important is left when you look back. At this crucial moment, all the memories of his first life as an ordinary Chinese student back on Earth flood his agitated mind. Immediately after, he recalls accidentally falling into this cruel, magical world, where he had to endure intense trials for 300 consecutive years. But even after that long initial period of suffering, the survivor still found the strength to hold on for another 200 years amidst the hardships. Countless memories that were hidden deep in his heart continue to resurface with intensity on the brink of his end. The scenes of his past come to life right in front of him, as if they were all happening again, all at the same time. More than 500 whole years fly by in a matter of seconds before his battered eyes. As he weighs his choices and the outcome of the battle, he finally admits failure in his great life goal. He reflects grimly the demonic path demands extreme cruelty, as going head to head against the entire world brings unavoidable consequences. However, a possibility crosses his mind about the potential effectiveness of the newly refined spring-autumn cicada hidden with him. Seized by this sudden hope, he lets out a maniacal laugh and swears he'll keep walking the path of darkness in his next life. One of the enemy warriors is startled, not understanding what's so funny, and alerts the group to a likely counterattack. Wasting no time, the vanguard charges again, demanding that the coveted artifact be handed over to the righteous side of the battle. But the cornered master decides to detonate his own body on purpose in a massive, uncontrollable energy explosion that devastates the entire mountain. The colossal flash from the destructive impact illuminates the region's dark night for several miles around. Far from that massacre, heavy rain falls on a huge, traditional pavilion isolated in the night storm. Inside the sacred place, an old man humbly begs for the ancestors' blessings, praying that the clan's annual ceremony will bring forth highly intelligent youths. Beside him, 2 other leaders echo the fervent pleas, hoping to get new blood and power to protect their families in the future. This entire ceremonial prayer reverberates softly through the spacious hall, focused on the grand altar decorated with bright flames. The elder concludes his words by bowing so deeply that his forehead touches the wooden floor, a sign of extreme respect for his lineage. The other subordinates follow the perfectly synchronized movement, revering the sacred space in absolute silence. Outside the property, the strong winds of the night storm continue to swing and batter the red lanterns hanging from the eaves. Back in the safety of the hall, the elders comment with nostalgia on how time flies, feeling like the previous ceremony happened just yesterday. One of them takes the opportunity to ask who will stand out in the next day's event, highlighting the fact that the Guyu clan has been in a terrible dry spell of geniuses for 3 years. In response to this valid concern, another chief bitterly points out that the neighboring rival villages have been revealing true prodigies lately. The biggest standout is a newly emerged boy named Bai Ningbing, whose natural combat ability is described within the clan as terrifying. The mere mention of this promising youth makes the atmosphere in the hall immediately thick with tension and genuine fear. It turns out the enemy's fame is justified by the fact that he reached level 3 in just 2 years of training, striking terror into the region's older generation. Despite acknowledging the opponent as the undisputed future pillar of the region, optimism returns to the conversation when they mention the history of a local boy who could speak perfectly at 3 months old. The chief's only sadness is that the child lost his parents very early, but the orphan's genius in composing complex works from a young age fills the group with pride. Taking control, the main leader declares the name Guyu Fang Yuan as the village's top bet, since children blessed with photographic memories often awaken incredible innate cultivation talents. The grand ambition he lays out is for strict and careful training to transform this young man into the only individual capable of going head to head with the rival genius in the long run. And the group's conviction is so strong that, Even in a more pessimistic prediction of average talent, they still see the boy carrying the organization's honor on his shoulders. To wrap up the productive meeting, the chief announces it's getting late and tells everyone to rest well to be prepared for the morning's opening ceremony. Seduced by the praise surrounding the orphan's qualities, one of the elders secretly imagines how lucrative it would be to take the boy into his own home to guarantee 100 years of financial stability for his family line. However, quickly noticing the selfish intentions infesting the hall, the leader turns his back and issues a stern warning that all competitions must occur without any dirty tricks that would stain the clan's internal unity. Quickly reined in by the pressure, the subordinates bow, denying any use of schemes, and bid farewell with wishes for a peaceful night's rest. Immediately after, the important figures leave the building and walk hastily across the wet bridges under the relentless, heavy rain. The old man is left alone in the silent room, staring at his own reflection in the mirror with the absolute conviction that the clan will be saved from ruin. Far away, the huge community of small, sloped roof houses remains completely dark under the violent crashing of thunder. The peace is suddenly shattered as the protagonist wakes up disoriented in the dark, stunned as he processes the absurd realization that he's gone back 500 years into his own past. With wide eyes, his hands touch his own skin, confirming without a doubt that his final act of desperation resulted in a genuine miracle of rebirth in the old village. The initial shock gives way to the memory of the ancient mythical descriptions of the cicada, and its position of extreme power as the seventh of the 10 supreme existences of reality. The raw sensation of clenching his small fists helps his mind grasp the immense weight of keeping 5 centuries of knowledge perfectly intact in his memory. The whole improbable turn of events still tries to convince the manipulator's senses that the walls around him are a product of his wounded imagination. He perfectly recalls the fables that explain this phenomenon through the existence of a great conceptual river that governs the currents of time and allows for swimming upstream. Historically, this version of events was usually treated as just a crazy fantasy, dismissed very skeptically by intellectuals. The main barrier to proving the rumors was always the artifact's usage toll, which demands nothing less than the complete evaporation of the life and energy of whoever tries to activate it. And since the outcome is completely dark and grim for the now gone activator, any attempt would seem irrational, but the former sovereign understands immediately that his insanity came at a very cheap price. Standing in the dimly lit room, the former villain admits to a giant dose of frustration as he weighs all the time and carnage wasted in the first timeline. His past actions included inhuman bloodbaths and catastrophic provocations against thousands of victims who were taken out only to make the creation of the small, miraculous item possible. The reason for his slight annoyance is realizing that the much acclaimed artifact did make the return trip with him to make his new stay in the past easier. A detailed exploration of the magic system reminds him that the creatures take on countless different forms and are governed by strict rules of permanent or continuous consumption. Cross-referencing this mental data, he deduces with simple logic that the powerful mystical being that saved his life served strictly as a one-time, used temporal cartridge. The loss causes no drop in morale, being instantly replaced by the smug conviction that repeating the diabolical recipe is just a matter of time and paperwork. The simple strategic mastery over future world events, geniuses still in their learning phase, and hidden legendary treasures puts his cunning mind several steps above anyone else breathing. And all this dirty planning is backed by shoulders carrying the primal instincts and imaginary scars of 500 years surviving as the planet's greatest battle threat. Sitting calmly on the wood of the narrow bed, the primary containment plan focused on immediate survival begins to take shape without emotion. The biggest hole in his divine tactic is dealing with the continental distance to the rich areas and the short chronological windows for stealing forgotten fortunes, putting the accumulation of basic power at the top of any attempt. The humiliation of inhabiting a body that hasn't even cracked the fundamental seals of internal energy forces his genius to take several humble steps back. He bitterly accepts the burden of being mortal again, fearing that a simple morning walk on the mountain could end with him meeting some random animal that could tear the future king to shreds, forcing a parasitic phase on his own village's bloodline. Despite his newly adopted pathetic dependency, the superb judgments of one who has known glory see that entire mountainous territory, sacred to the peasants, as a mere grain of sand. All the walls and security gates provide a restrictive social cage for his demonic appetite, but they charge a minimal price for the excellent immediate protection they offer. Willingly accepting this low-impact limitation, the wolf in a child's skin focuses entirely on cultivating the internal peace of the perfect disguise until he reclaims a lethal threat level of 3. Looking at the night landscape, the MC reflects that he can soon leave this miserable mountain behind, as the awakening ceremony happens the next day, and will mark the beginning of his training as a master. The word talent crosses his mind, bringing a series of internal questions. Just then, the sound of the wooden bedroom door opening breaks the room's silence. A boy identical to him enters the room, suddenly calling for his older brother. Confused by the scene, Fang Zheng asks why he's standing by the window, getting soaked by all that rain. Fang Yuan mentally acknowledges the presence of his younger twin brother. He glances at the boy from the corner of his eye without changing his cold, distant posture. The boy explains that he came to close the window that was left open and warns that their aunt and uncle would be worried if they saw him awake so late on the eve of such an important event. All this coldness was never a surprise to the newcomer, who was already used to his brother's distance since they were little and tried to justify it as the natural eccentricity of great geniuses. Next to him, the younger brother always felt as common and insignificant as an ant, even though they both had the exact same face. This whole suffocating feeling of inferiority weighed crushingly on the boy's shoulders. His great rebellion against the heavens was the fact that they were born at the exact same moment, but only the older one received a brilliant gift, while he remained just a worthless stone. The constant whispers and gossip from the villagers, pointing him out only as Fang Yuan's overshadowed brother, deeply hurt his self-esteem. Over the years, this constant comparison made him hate his own reflection in the mirror, making the boy increasingly withdrawn and silent in the face of the sadness in his heart. Back to the conversation in the room, the protagonist just repeats the word worried in an extremely ironic tone. It turns out their parents passed away during an official clan mission when they were both only 3 years old. Using the excuse of a family upbringing, their aunt and uncle took the orphan nephews in under their own roof. However, the couple's true intention was to subject the children to harsh treatment, while stealing and enjoying all the inheritance left by the deceased. To survive this difficult life, Fang Yuan was forced to abandon the idea of hiding his abilities and revealed some talents that were nothing more than the famous poems from Earth stored in his mature soul. This small sample of intelligence was enough to attract the village's attention, requiring him to adopt a cold demeanor to handle the continuous pressure and ensuring much better treatment from his aunt and uncle over time. But the truth is, this was never more than a simple financial investment for the couple, something his innocent younger brother never realized while secretly accumulating blind resentments. As soon as Fang Zheng's top-tier talent was finally revealed, the boy began to dedicate much of his time to trying to put the protagonist down. Fate played a very cruel game with the twins, giving the reincarnated one only a lower rank aptitude. From that decisive moment on, the treatment between the two completely reversed, turning the decade's genius into a humiliated failure, while the forgotten one became the new promising star. The general feeling was like watching the younger brother ascend to the heavens like a mighty dragon while the older one plummeted to the earth like a wounded bird. During his past life, he truly felt a burning hatred for all this injustice. However, carrying such a futile resentment completely lost its meaning after accumulating 500 years of intense trials. With this new, mature perspective, he can finally understand the petty actions of his brother, his selfish aunt and uncle, and even the mortal enemies he would face centuries later. The natural principle of the strong devouring the weak was always the only absolute rule that governed that chaotic world from top to bottom. In a setting filled with endless wars and bloodshed, human ambition grabbing any available opportunity becomes the most understandable thing of all. The only unshakable certainty left in his mind is the decision to coldly take out anyone who dares to block his grand path against the entire world. The demonic path he has chosen requires full acceptance of a dark, solitary journey paved with the demise of thousands of enemies. Focusing back on his younger brother's presence at the bedroom door, he ends the conversation by telling the boy to leave immediately. The boy lowers his head, slightly embarrassed by the rude order and lack of affection. That penetrating and frightening look from his older brother caused a terrible discomfort, giving him the unsettling feeling of being completely exposed in the middle of a freezing snowstorm. It was as if no lie, plan, or secret could be hidden from that suffocating and intimidating presence. Accepting the silent dismissal, he says goodbye, wishing him a good day for tomorrow's ceremony, and closes the wooden door behind him. Outside the room, Fang Zheng rests his hand on the doorframe with a melancholic and thoughtful air. Then, the boy walks away slowly through the dark corridors of the property, under the constant sound of the heavy rain. Meanwhile, the village's night watchman beats his bamboo tools, breaking the total silence of the early morning streets. The man shouts, announcing it's past 3 in the morning for anyone still awake. The daily warning continues, alerting the secluded residents to be careful about potential fires in the wooden houses. Hours later, the protagonist's dark eyes open calmly in the darkness of his room. He sits up in bed as the day is almost breaking, noticing he only slept for 2 hours due to the intense flow of strategies and memories in his mind. Raising his own hand to his face, he notes the uncomfortable fragility of that youthful body, which hasn't even begun the process of cultivating internal energy. This deep physical realization highlights an extremely irritating fatigue and weakness for someone who once had the world in his hands. However, none of this is capable of shaking or delaying the centuries of ruthless determination that have shaped his soul up to this point. Getting out of bed calmly, he opens the large window of the room to check the weather outside. Extending his free hand outside, he notes with relief that the spring rain has finally stopped battering the village. At this opportune moment, a servant girl approaches, walking through the courtyard with a basin in her hands, and announces that she has already noticed him moving around. The sweet-looking girl cheerfully says she'll come up to help him get cleaned up for the big event. Entering the room with familiarity, she places the wooden bowl of fresh water on the small table. The boy uses a simple cloth towel to dry his wet face without showing any hurry. Soon after, the maid helps the young master put on his dark tunic, carefully adjusting the fabric around his shoulders. All this physical closeness during the morning service is treated with coldness and total indifference by the manipulator. Casting an analytical glance at the young woman's face, the protagonist knows very well that her innocent beauty hides a cunning spy planted by his aunt. This employee's true personality is completely shallow and heartless, ready to turn against him at the first advantageous opportunity the gods offer. Just then, the younger brother opens a crack in the sliding door, timidly calling for his older brother. But the boy freezes in place as soon as his eyes catch the pretty servant girl tending to the protagonist's clothes so intimately and closely. Consumed by envy and restrained desire, he imagines how wonderful it would feel to have that same girl waiting for him with such care one day. The bitter frustration grows as he compares his own old and wrinkled servant to the beautiful young woman who attends the room next door every morning. To worsen the common boy's humiliation, the elderly employee was only assigned to him because his own brother had to intercede on his behalf with their aunt and uncle, so he wouldn't be left completely helpless. It turns out Shen Kai's influence goes far beyond aesthetics, as her mother governs all the servants in the house and carries the absolute trust of the masters on her shoulders. Dismissing any additional help with his clothes, the protagonist pushes the employee's hand away and curtly says there's no need to fix anything else. His old memories recall how he fell blindly in love with her charms, and even planned to make her his official concubine to elevate the girl's station in life if he achieved the highest graduation. But all that foolish affection turned into countless looks filled with disgust and contempt from the servant herself right after his tragic failure in the aptitude test. Fortunately, that knave boy was crushed by time, and not a single drop of consideration for the spy's ambitions remained. Maintaining his unshakable, apathetic expression, he simply tells the young woman to get out of the room once and for all. Irritated and incredulous at the sudden coldness from someone who had always treated her well, the servant starts to cry crocodile tears and runs out of the place, her pride wounded. The boy watches in absolute silence as she hurries away across the stone pavement of the outer courtyard. Finishing adjusting the guards on his own wrists, he turns his face and asks if his younger brother is ready for their appointment. The boy nods, allowing the protagonist to notice the heavy dark circles under his eyes and understand that these sleepless nights of anxiety had gone completely unnoticed in the past life. In any case, his pragmatic mind quickly concludes that these small family details no longer make the slightest difference to his grand goal of absolute power. The two brothers finally leave the safety of the property and walk toward the clan's huge central square, leading a line of hopeful youths under the morning light. Their arrival immediately stirs the villagers, who whisper in admiration, confirming the identity of the famous poet genius who always wears a face empty of any worldly emotion. It all starts with the crowd gossiping while Fang Yuan observes the commotion, noting that this is the perfect example of how exceptional talent attracts envy early on. Right behind, people comment that it's no surprise he's treated coldly after announcing his C grade, pointing at Fang Zheng and thinking the boy is weak compared to his brother. Already imagining the pitiful score he'll get on the test. The sun begins to set behind the sharp mountains that surround the region. Just then, the protagonist gives a quick glance from the corner of his eye. His hand begins to tremble slightly before clenching tightly in a sudden movement. Shen Qi's eyes widen, visibly frightened by the situation. With his back turned, the wind blows through Fang Yuan's hair as his heart races. In his mind, he feels like he's drowning in a sea of deep darkness, desperately trying to reach the surface to survive. Clutching his own chest, the young man tries to calm down and maintain emotional control. He takes a deep breath and regains focus in his gaze. With his mind clear again, he goes back to observing the landscape calmly. Memories of his aunt and uncle surface, recalling how they always planned things behind his back, manipulating everything step by step to plant envy and create a rift between the brothers in his past life. Back then, his lack of experience blinded him to many things, and since his brother was very naive and foolish, his uncle's plan ended up working. However, now carrying knowledge and perception that rival immortals, he assesses that with the ceremony approaching so quickly, it might be difficult to change the scenario immediately. Even so, using his demonic methods and wisdom, he concludes it's not impossible to reverse everything, being able to completely suppress his younger brother and turn the servant girl into a concubine right from the get. go. As for his aunt and uncle, and even the clan elders, the protagonist guarantees he has at least hundreds of different ways to defeat them. Resting his hand on his face, he admits he's simply not in the mood to make all that tiring effort. Shattering the importance of these people in his mind, he decides he can discard his own brother at any moment, that the pretty servant girl is worthless without loyalty, and that there's no reason to waste energy on fleeting figures like his relatives or the village leaders. Walking in a relaxed manner, he makes it clear that as long as they don't get in his way, they can all disappear, as he doesn't need to care about any of them. A commotion takes over the village's main courtyard, with the crowd gathered among the buildings with curved roofs. The chatter continues as an elder walks calmly down the stone corridor to take the lead of the event. Satisfied with everyone's punctuality on the day of the awakening ceremony, the man announces that this is the turning point in the youth's lives, asking only that they follow him without much talking. The group descends a rustic staircase, illuminated only by torches attached to the rocky walls. Soon they arrive at a huge underground cavern filled with stalactites and a strong mystical light. The boy observes the intense glow emanating from the depths of the enclosed space. Hundreds of years ago, the Guyu clan migrated from the central lands to the southern border and settled on Qingmao Mountain. It was exactly at this time that the ancestors discovered a spiritual spring hidden in this gigantic cavern. This spring has the ability to produce an absurd amount of primeval stones for the people. With the whole group gathered before the glistening water, it's clear that this place is the true foundation of the entire village's strength. The river's surface shines a deep blue, reflecting the pure energy of the untouched environment. An entire bank covered in small, glowing flowers surrounds the calm waters of the spring. Known as the moonlight orchid, this delicate plant serves as food for various types of gyu. Assessing the situation carefully, Fang Yuan knows that this sea of flowers is, in fact, the greatest cultivation medium of the entire local clan. Some youths in the crowd are amazed by the view, excitedly commenting on how beautiful the plants are. The elder prepares his notebook and tells them to pay attention when they are called, explaining that they must cross the water to the opposite bank. Pointing the way with his writing brush, he instructs them to walk as far as they can, as the farther they get, the better the final result will be. The boys confirm in unison that they understood the test rules very well. One of the boys clenches his fists, aware that the distance walk defines one's talent, remembering his father's words about how a good score could change his entire life and lift his family out of poverty. The silence is broken when the leader calls for Guyu Chenbo, making the boy stammer nervously as his heart pounds in his chest. Wasting no time, he steps into the shallow, illuminated water to begin the dreaded crossing. His wet feet touch the opposite bank, sinking slightly into the ground covered with blue orchids. The candidate advances through the sea of shining flowers, feeling the invisible weight of the test oppressing his body. Thick drops of sweat run down his face as the tension increases with each slow movement. He manages to take the first, the second, and then the third dragged step among the magical plants. Trembling from the effort, Chen Bo tries to force himself to keep moving forward, fighting desperately not to give in. Following the young man's weak performance, the elder just blows smoke from his mouth without showing any surprise. With the brush in hand, he curtly notes a mark of only 3 steps in the participant's record. The boy collapses to the ground, strengthless, confirming in front of everyone his total lack of talent to become a Gyu master. Darkness covers the face of the failed youth, who accepts his cruel failure in complete silence. While the loser returns head down to this side of the river, the evaluator is already shouting the name of the next candidate on the list to avoid wasting time. Analyzing the results, Fang Yuan reflects that not everyone is born with this natural gift, but in a normal situation, it's already considered good if half the people possess some magical aptitude. Within the village, however, the success rate is usually much higher, thanks to the legendary first-generation leader, a famous warrior who left behind extremely strong genes due to his intense martial cultivation. Because they carry this powerful man's blood in their veins, the average talent quality of the local residents ends up being infinitely superior to that of other regions in the world. Despite this luxury genetic inheritance, the elder sighs in disappointment as he sees another poor result happening in front of him. Declaring another failure out loud, he calls for Guyu Mobei, who raises his hand full of confidence and energy to present himself for the test. In an impulsive and violent leap, the boy lands heavily on the bank of the flowered field, splashing water and petals everywhere. Without showing any difficulty, he tears past the 10, 20, and 30-step marks, maintaining his always firm posture. Mobei's heavy walk finally stops when he reaches the exact mark of 36 steps carved into the ground. The other participants are jaw-dropped at the distance their peer managed to cover so easily. Very satisfied with the display, the leader praises Mobei's B grade and asks the boy to come closer so he can examine the details of his primeval sea. Placing his hand firmly on the boy's back, the man emits a golden aura to take a close, up internal measurement. Noting the results on the document, the evaluator concludes that Mo Bei has a primeval C measuring 6 by 6, authorizing rigorous training for the young man before letting him return to the group. This special talent is officially measured and divided into 4 different levels, covering from an A grade to the most basic D grade. The grade achieved dictates the warrior's future, where low levels serve to support the family or form the backbone of the clan, while a B grade guarantees extreme care and leadership positions within a few years. But when a true genius with the legendary A grade appears, the entire village celebrates the great fortune, as in 10 years he becomes an absolute monster and is even eligible to compete for the coveted position of leader of all. Turning his attention back to Mo Bei, the elder assures him that as long as the young man dedicates himself, he will certainly become one of the great leaders in the future, asking him to give his all in training. In the shadows of the damp cave, the older members of the clan exchange short laughs and low comments. Full of himself, Mo Bei's grandfather boasts directly to his rival, asking if he found his grandson's performance good enough. Annoyed by the unprovoked taunt and the smug smile of his political adversary, the red-haired man turns his face and grumbles with restrained anger. A full hour passes with the youths walking non-stop across the carpet of orchids. Chewing on the end of his brush, the evaluator sadly notes that the bloodline is thinning, as the clan hasn't produced a high-ranking master in years and the new generation only presents warriors with increasingly weaker talent. Shaking off worries about the village's decline, he deepens his voice to summon Gu Yu Chi Chen. The boy with his hair tied back swallows hard and answers the call, still a bit scared by the pressure of the moment. Forcing his way through the shining sea, the redhead also manages to plant his boots exactly on the difficult mark of 36 steps away. The elder's face lights up completely, surprised and happy to stumble upon another valuable B grade on the same night. The white-haired elder reacts with surprise upon hearing the crowd confirm the mark of 36 steps, but the disbelief soon gives way to a loud laugh from the proud grandfather, who rubs the great achievement in his political rival's face. Observing the scene from afar, Fang Yuan recalls that this boy actually only had C-grade talent, but ended up getting help to fake the ceremony results. He assesses that it would be very easy to use some flawless method to cheat on his own test and get a high grade to secure clan resources, but he simply didn't have time to prepare anything since he was reborn. Besides, the protagonist understands that faking excellent talent now would be useless in the long run, as he wouldn't be able to maintain the required cultivation speed and would be found out anyway. The situation of the young man who was just evaluated is very different, as his grandfather is one of the 2 leaders with the most authority in the village and can easily cover up his grandson's lies. The clash between these 2 influential figures is so great that the man desperately needed a prodigy successor to suppress his opponent, which motivated him to hide the truth from the clan for a long time. Satisfaction fills the manipulator as he remembers that this whole charade was only revealed in his past life because of an unexpected incident. With this, he concludes that exposing the secret now would yield only a miserable reward and attract the hatred of an extremely powerful enemy, where trying any blackmail with his current social status would be a fatal mistake. His strategic thoughts are interrupted when the evaluator shouts Fang Yuan's name loud and clear for the start of the next test. At this decisive moment, the boy recalls the oldest legend of that world, which narrates the formation of the primeval lands infested with beasts known as calamities. In the midst of all this hostile and dangerous nature, the first human in history walked alone, receiving the name Renzu. The enormous, cruel creatures that dominated the environment loved the taste of his flesh and wished to devour this man at all costs. Running to survive, he suffered at the hands of predators because he didn't have a body as hard as rock or sharp teeth to defend himself. Lacking any natural physical advantage, fighting the calamities on equal terms was a practically impossible task for the first human. Trying to drag himself miserably across the ground, his food source was totally unstable, forcing him to hide all day long. The poor man found himself at the lowest rung of the food chain, surviving each second by a true miracle in the darkness. On the verge of absolute despair, 3 small magical beings approached the water and promised to help him overcome those terrible difficulties if they were sustained by his life. With nothing to lose, Renzu agreed to donate his energy to the first spirit, which represented brute strength. The human's body was filled with overwhelming power, allowing him to secure a stable food source, protect himself, and fight relentlessly against the beasts. But the euphoria was short-lived when he realized that strength wouldn't solve everything, ending up defeated when facing an entire group of monsters, which forced him to offer his middle age to the spirit of wisdom. With his mind expanded by the new entity, he learned to think strategically and managed to take down creatures that his brute claws would never be able to defeat. Chewing the flesh of his prey voraciously, the survivor continued to grow while the natural order of things took its toll, making him older and older. Realizing that the human no longer had youth or vitality to offer as payment, strength and wisdom decided to abandon their host very coldly. Completely weak and helpless, he was left alone in the vastness of the cruel wilderness once again. Without his greatest defenses, the old man couldn't outrun the beasts that quickly surrounded him and collapsed to the ground, his heart dominated by dread. Lying down and waiting for his tragic end, the third little creature revealed itself to be the spirit of hope, which was still there, willing to help. The man pulls his hair and shouts that he has nothing of value left, as giving away the little bit of life he has left would result in an immediate end under those claws. However, the mystical entity floats gently and explains that its needs are the smallest of all, asking only that he give it his own heart. Seeing no other way out of his inevitable fate, the human extends his tired hand towards the light and agrees to give up the last thing that belongs to him. A blinding burst of energy sweeps through the darkness of the place as hope manifests with full force, scaring away all the cowardly monsters. Relief dominates the old man's face as he discovers that, in the end, hope was precisely what the calamities feared most in the entire world. From that defining moment on, whenever he faced great difficulties, the man would offer up his own chest to find a way out. Back in the real world, the call echoes through the cavern as the protagonist stands still before all the village youths. Excitement dominates the boy's expression as he finds the whole evaluation situation more and more interesting. He calmly steps into the shallow, shining water of the underground river, beginning his long-awaited aptitude test. The young man walks serenely through the sea of blue orchids, leaving small, twinkling lights to rise with each step he takes on the flowered ground. The magical plants react to the gentle touch of his boots, accumulating a mystical energy that slowly begins to envelop him. Focused on his path, he clearly feels the manifestation of the agitated spirits around his feet. A spark of intense light suddenly shoots up, climbing his legs until it concentrates right in the middle of his waist. Observing the initial performance, the evaluator shows pride on his face, aware of the formidable potential of the boy in the water. Behind him, the other chiefs whisper in the dark, commenting that the number of awakened Fae seems much smaller than imagined for a literary prodigy. The clan's main leader furrows his brows with a stern expression, realizing that this display has nothing to do with the sign of a top-tier talent. Completely oblivious to the elder's disappointment, the candidate continues to force his way through the flowered water without showing any emotion in his eyes. Clenching his fist firmly, he mentally calculates his progress and notes that he has just surpassed the mark of 23 steps. With great ease, the protagonist advances straight to the 27th step, causing a huge burst of light to shine around his body. The sound of his own racing heartbeat reverberates strongly in his head during the entire intense awakening process. Feeling the internal pressure increase absurdly, he concentrates his attention on the profound transformation occurring right below his chest. The small sparks of energy finally condense into a luminous sphere, completing the objective of the magical crossing. Staring calmly at the newly formed source, he knows perfectly well that this small core is the key to the true immortality he so desperately seeks. The young man analyzes his own mystical aperture in his abdomen, observing how it carries a completely mysterious and abnormal essence. Although this structure pulses within his physical organism, it never mixes with or interferes with the functioning of his real organs. That hidden space is vast yet incredibly compact, housing a pure primeval sea supported by a thin, luminous membrane that prevents total collapse. However, the euphoria of possessing the sea is met with the sad limitation that the waters only fill 44% of the container, confirming the boy's dreaded mediocre grade. With this foundation established, blocking the access of more external energies, the orphan formally assumes the position of level 1 on the path of cultivation. Standing in the middle of the flowers, he recalls the cruelty of the previous life, where he couldn't take even one more step forward after this exact mark. Shocked by the sudden halt in the Great Prospects Walk, the evaluator lowers his notebook, unable to believe the miserable sight he is witnessing. The young man casts an extremely cold look over his shoulder, completely ignoring the silent commotion that begins to spread through the cavern. Turning his back on the blue, shining sea, he begins the long return to the dry banks under the stunned gazes of the crowd. One of the boys in line gasps in bewilderment, blurting out that the clan's literary genius was nothing more than a common grade after walking only 27 steps. The chatter gains momentum among the incredulous competitors, who begin to question if the result isn't some grotesque system error. On the other side of the confusion, the younger brother watches Fang Yuan's return, completely dumbfounded. After all, their relatives had been anxiously waiting for an unforgettable talent. The elders in the shadows clench their teeth in deep frustration, cursing the mediocre result, while the leader refuses the possibility of failure in such an infallible method. To confirm the tragedy and bury any doubt, the other chief points out that everyone witnessed every detail with their own eyes, making any cheating absolutely impossible. With his pride wounded, The patriarch swallows hard and bitterly explains that displaying great intelligence is no absolute guarantee of possessing immense power for battles. He sighs heavily before the group, declaring that the village's high expectations have turned into a terrible disappointment that shatters everyone's predictions. At this, the reincarnated one recalls his first life, where the weight of that low-level condemnation annihilated his sanity in a split second. The shock of social rejection at the time left him paralyzed and sinking in the cold waters of the cavern while he listened to the cruel taunts of the same teenagers who once adored him. On that same forgotten night, his aunt and uncle's calculating faces turned to pure hostility when they realized the nephew they had taken in yielded no profit. Cutting through the turbulent waters of his oppressive past, the current, mature version of the manipulator crosses the illuminated river with unshakable serenity. Without bowing his head to anyone, he steps onto dry land, facing the collective disappointment without shedding a single tear. In his heart, closed to worldly emotions, he absorbs the lessons of the ancient legend of humanity, where blind hope is the only antidote to pain. Focused on himself, he mentally scoffs at the other's sadness, ironically questioning what relevance the frustration of that bunch of fools has on his own relentless destiny. Turning his back on his shamed family, the protagonist declares with absolute conviction that he will follow his own bloody path, letting them all drown in unhappiness if they wish. Swallowing the great historical failure, the evaluator's posture slumps, and he calls out loudly once more, summoning Fang Zheng to take on the challenge in the waters. The tense silence of the cavern is broken by the loud call for Gu Yu Fang Zheng, making the boy respond immediately, while trying to hide the nervousness stamped on his face. Wasting no time, he takes the first heavy step toward the challenge. The water of the underground river splashes to the sides as the boy sinks his foot onto the shallow bank. Just then, mocking laughter begins to echo off the rocky walls of the place as he tries to advance. One of the elders in the shadows covers his face with his hand, lamenting that the brothers of the Fang family have absolutely nothing special about them. Another leader observes the scene with total disappointment, considering the younger brother's performance a true disgrace to the clan. In the middle of the sea of orchids, the boy suddenly stops and clutches his clothes at his chest. A strong gust of magical wind explodes around his body, stirring the river's waters. Watching everything from the bank, Shen Kui trembles from head to toe, unable to believe what she's seeing. Meanwhile, the protagonist just watches the situation unfold with an unshakable coldness in his eyes. The extreme effort makes Fang Zheng cough violently as he tries to stay on his feet in the illuminated water. Taking advantage of the apparent weakness, Mobei's grandfather lets out a loud laugh to mock that the older and younger of that family are two peas in a pod, which visibly annoys the clan leader with the provocation. Hidden in the shadows, Fang Yuan maintains an ironic posture and mentally encourages his brother to continue the show. The servant girl watching the ceremony widens her eyes as she notices a sudden change in the test. Observing the sea of people before him, the former sovereign confidently deduces that the path to the future will be much more entertaining than he had imagined. The spy planted by his aunt and uncle turns completely pale as she processes the true result of the test. In the face of the commotion that begins to form, the long-haired boy turns his back with total indifference. Meanwhile, the younger brother continues to force his body to walk across the carpet of mystical plants. The young employee reflects in shock that she never imagined seeing the older brother act so calmly in the face of his own failure. Shaking off any negative expectations, Fang Zheng charges forward, tearing through the luminous sea without stopping. One of the female candidates screams at the top of her lungs that the boy has just reached the incredible mark of 43 steps. The main leader of the clan vibrates with pure euphoria and celebrates to the heavens the emergence of a top-grade talent. Completely amazed, one of the female elders comments that it's unbelievable to see a genius of this caliber appear in the village after 3 long years of drought. Ignoring all formality, the red-haired leader already announces that the child's lineage originates from his own family and demands the right to adopt the boy. Immediately, Mobei's grandfather refutes the idea, accusing his rival of being corrupt and incompetent, stating with conviction that the boy would be much better off under his own care. Cutting the fight short, the patriarch tells everyone to shut up and declares that no one there is more qualified to raise the child than the head of the organization himself. He glares at his subordinates, daring anyone who has the courage to go against his supreme authority at that moment. A whole week flies by after the great revelation in the underground cavern. In the academy's bright classroom, the instructor explains to the youths that humans are the spirit of all living beings, while Gu represent the pure essence of heaven and earth. The master continues his lecture, detailing how the level of talent directly affects the size of the primeval sea in a cultivator's magical aperture. The explanation continues, highlighting that warriors endowed with this type of aptitude are the most suited to reach extremely high levels of power, becoming untouchable legends. In the middle of this very important theoretical class, the former demon is fast asleep, lying on his own study desk. The sound of the boy's heavy breathing draws attention, making his classmates notice that he has passed out again in broad daylight. The rumors flying around the village at night say the guy spends his early mornings stumbling around drunk to cope with the trauma of getting such a low grade on the test. Leaning on the wooden desk, the protagonist maintains his act of being a depressed and hopeless student perfectly. Annoyed by the student's lazy attitude, the teacher grumbles that he can't stand seeing the young man sleeping all the time and causing headaches for the organization. However, he soon gives up on demanding dedication and concludes that spending resources on a failure who can't handle his own grade would be a total waste for the clan. Far from the school, the leaders talk about the village's past, remembering that only 2 masters managed to reach the 5th step of strength in the entire local history. The first formidable success story was precisely that of the great ancestor who founded the village centuries ago. With his cheek resting on his hand, the reincarnated one listens to the legend about the second legendary master, who was the benevolent 4th generation leader. The instructor states with conviction that this hero of the past would certainly have broken through the barriers of level 6 if he hadn't suffered a cowardly attack from the flower wine monk. This tragic memory enrages the leaders, who mourn the premature passing of the former chief and call the enemy monk a coward and a scoundrel. It turns out this demonic adversary was a hated criminal who traveled to the mountain to commit atrocities right under the village's nose. After a colossal battle that destroyed the region, the monk was completely beaten and forced to kneel on the ground to pathetically beg for his own life. But Fang Yuan's attentive gaze follows the story, which says that the righteous leader took pity on the aggressor and decided to forgive his sins to spare the scumbag's life. Taking advantage of the hero's distraction and mercy, the monk launched a brutal surprise attack that pierced his opponent's body clean through. Although the leader took out the demon on the spot out of pure hatred, his injuries were too severe, and he ended up passing away shortly after as a great savior of the village. Leaning on his school desk, the boy turns this old story over in his head and tries to remember the crucial details about the monk's demise. He stretches lazily in his chair, frustrated that he can't seem to find the secret inheritance hidden by this villain in the region. His memory of his first life recalls a clan warrior whose heart was broken about 2 months after this same period, who then got wasted on the streets. The strong smell of liquor ended up attracting a small liquor worm to the man's body, passed out on the ground. Trying to capture the mystical little creature by any means, the guy chased the critter to an underground cave where he ended up stumbling upon the monk's mortal remains by pure accident. The big problem is that the protagonist only heard shallow rumors and gossip about this great discovery, which leaves him completely clueless about the exact location of the secret entrance. To try and recreate the chance encounter, he has bought liquor every night for the past week and wandered under the moonlight, but the coveted worm never showed up. The obsessive focus on this search has a simple reason: refining that rare being as his first vital artifact would be an infinitely superior advantage to the power provided by the clan to beginners. Looking out the bright classroom window, he realizes with concern that April has already arrived and the deadline for his window of opportunity is rapidly closing. Outside the military academy, strong winds sway the leaves of the large bamboo trees on the grounds. The instructor ends the theoretical part of the week, announcing that it's time for the students to choose their first magical items in the clan's treasure room. He demands total dedication in the process of refining the new creatures, stressing that this is the initial practical test for the newly formed class. To spice up the student challenge, the master offers a hefty reward of 20 primeval stones to the first student who manages to master their own artifact. As soon as the class ends, excitement takes over the teenagers, who rush out, pushing and shoving, desperate to get to the resource depot to secure the best available options. The guard in charge of the facility's entrance yells furiously, telling that bunch of kids to form an orderly line and enter one at a time. The large wooden doors of the academy remain open as the intense movement continues in the courtyard. Outside the restricted room, the youths wait their turn, anxiously discussing which power they will choose to start their journey of battles. When his turn finally comes, the protagonist pushes the heavy door and enters the completely dark stone room alone. The place reveals itself as a long corridor lined with ancient shelves, where dozens of jars are lined up, holding the small, sleeping entities. Walking through the silent depot, he runs the basic information through his head, remembering that the magic system is rigidly divided into 9 great levels of strength. Evaluating the options in the basins with a critical eye, he notes that the clan has only made the most basic level 1 beasts available to the class of rookies. This restriction makes perfect sense, as trying to use a higher power artifact would exhaust the wielder's energy and require an absurd amount of expensive food to sustain the magical creature. The choice of the first host is an extremely dangerous step, as this entity creates a vital connection with the human's heart, which means the critter's end causes terrible damage to the master. Analyzing the shelves, the former villain laments the lack of clues about the mysterious monk, as his great initial desire was to focus all his attention on capturing the coveted liquor worm. Since he has no idea when he will stumble upon the secret cave, he decides to ensure his basic safety by taking a moonlight dew for now. He carefully removes the small bluish relic from the bowl, admiring the crescent-shaped creature that was created exclusively through his village's secret methods. Resting on the palm of his hand, this small, shining artifact functions as the great symbol of the organization's power, impossible to find in other regions of the planet. Walking calmly out of the military facility's door, the young man tucks his mediocre choice into his sleeve, aware that the worm lost in the mountain is still his main target for dominating the world's future. It all begins with the protagonist aware that the Moonlight artifact is a specialty exclusive to the village, although it doesn't help much in a master's development compared to the liquor worm. Leaning on the counter of the local tavern, he orders 2 jars of aged wine, maintaining his routine from the past few days in the hope of attracting the mystical creature around the region. The bartender quickly collects the payment, very satisfied with the guaranteed profit from the loyal customer. It turns out that these primeval stones not only serve as the main currency of the world, but also carry a condensed essence that is extremely important for accelerating warriors' progress. However, maintaining this pace of constant daily spending would make any fortune disappear in a very short time. Standing in the middle of the courtyard with the jars in his hands, Fang Yuan calculates that his initial savings are already practically gone after a full week of frustrated searches. For a cultivator, having enough stones is a vital resource capable of overcoming even the enormous disadvantages of having a lower-tier talent. Walking through the bustling streets, the former villain notes that he will soon have no more money to buy drinks and wonders if he will really be forced to refine the village's common artifact as his first choice. Observing the flow of people from above, he reflects on the prize of 20 stones promised by the academy elder to the first student who masters their magical entity, but he recognizes that his mediocre grade destroys any chance of victory without using some dirty trick, as this process depends purely on natural aptitude. Just then, his younger brother runs breathlessly towards him, surprised to confirm the drinking rumors and hastily warning him that their aunt and uncle demand to see him immediately. Grabbing the protagonist's arm, Fang Zheng tries to pull him while begging him to stop drinking like that, arguing that their loved ones are worried sick. This past month caused a brutal reversal of realities, where the former legend fell from grace while the forgotten boy began to shine brightly as the clan's new great promise. Coming out of the shadows, straight to the top of everyone's attention brought an overwhelming sensation for the younger brother, who was still struggling a lot to adapt to this new glamorous life. Suddenly, he started receiving admiring glances from all the residents wherever he went, walking awkwardly under the pressure of this sudden fame. And in the midst of all this furor, hearing the gossip about his older brother's decline was a huge shock, finding it hard to believe that such a strong figure had sunk into depression to escape reality. Observing the defeated figure in front of him, the boy pettily realizes that the former prodigy's ruin only serves to confirm his own spectacular growth. The realization finally starts to sink in for the younger brother, bringing the unshakable conviction that the protagonist is just an ordinary man, while he is the true superior genius of the family. Inflated by this new reality, he firmly holds Fang Yuan's shoulder and tells his brother to wake up and get a grip once and for all. But the only response he gets is an extremely cold and intimidating sideways glance. Shock instantly takes over Fang Zheng, dissolving all his authoritative posture. That deep well of darkness in his older brother's eyes carries a crushing pressure that is completely impossible to decipher. Without expressing a shred of emotion, the reincarnated one analyzes the boy's audacity with total indifference. Bothered by his own fear, the rookie clenches his teeth, trying to regain his courage, telling himself that he has changed completely and no longer needs to cower before his own brother. Breaking the tense mood for good, the former demon just tells the boy to stop staring at nothing and get moving, turning his back in a relaxed manner. Far away, the aunt bites her lip hard, consumed by a silent irritation inside the house. With that, the large double doors of the hall are thrown open violently by the protagonist. The late afternoon sun illuminates the traditional roofs of the village during this uncomfortable family meeting. Sitting comfortably in the main room, the uncle breaks the ice by commenting on how time has flown and praising the fact that both possess magical aptitude, with a clear emphasis on the younger brother's promising talent. Satisfied with the situation, the patriarch offers a small sum of 6 primeval stones to each of them as a gift of encouragement for their studies. Beside him, the woman helpfully adds that this money will be very useful to cover the enormous energy expenses required during the creature control phase. Holding the small bag of coins, Fang Yuan analyzes the handout in absolute silence. On the contrary, Fang Zheng receives the gift with a radiant face, deeply thanking them for all the financial help at such a critical moment in his training. In a gesture of extreme reverence, the boy kneels on the floor and swears that the great gratitude for the impeccable upbringing he received will be forever engraved in his heart. Satisfied with the perfect act, the aunt tells her nephew to get up with a motherly tone, emphasizing the immense pride of having raised them as true sons all this time, especially since the couple couldn't have natural heirs. Throwing the final bait of the night, the woman confesses that their biggest dream would be to formalize this bond and make the boys their legitimate sons for the rest of their lives. Maintaining a friendly tone, the man confirms the intention to adopt them to form a genuine family and directly asks if the prodigy is willing to accept this noble proposal. The young man's eyes shine instantly, visibly moved by the possibility of finally belonging to a structured home. With his voice choked with emotion, he reveals that he has felt an immense void and a painful desire for a family since the tragic day he lost his biological parents. The woman closes her eyes, relieved at how easy the ploy was, and affectionately asks the good boy to stop using the term "want and uncle" once and for all. Without a second's hesitation, the newly adopted son calls them Mom and Dad, with pure joy drawing warm and satisfied reactions from the funnies. Wiping away fake tears, the matriarch feigns deep emotion, declaring that all the hard effort of raising them for the past decade was worth it in the end. With the first phase of the strategic plan complete, the head of the house directs the same irresistible offer to his older nephew. But the protagonist just shakes his head, rejecting the union in a cold and carefree manner. The talented boy is outraged by the sudden refusal, calling out to his brother, not understanding this rebellious attitude at all. Quickly shifting to a stern posture, the man accepts the harsh decision and warns that he will use his upcoming 15th birthday to force him into independence. Handing over 200 stones as a final large financial support before the veiled expulsion, the younger brother's eyes widen, impressed by the absurd amount of money offered to his brother so suddenly. Showing total coldness to the stage drama, the reincarnated one formally bids farewell to his aunt and uncle and announces he will leave if the main business is resolved. Desperate about the impulsive decision, the newly adopted son tries to intervene, asking his new parents to guide the older boy to think more clearly. But the patriarch calms him down quite cynically, assuring him that matters like this can't be forced, and that he is more than satisfied to have a genius prodigy as a son. Ending the small meeting in the main room, the leader orders the servants to take very good care of the new young master, allowing the young man to leave in peace. Later that same night, the husband watches the storm from the dark window and confesses to his wife that the cursed nephew seems to have seen through their scheme, as the village laws guarantee that the firstborn inherits the entire fortune at 16 years of age. Before the illuminated altar, it's clear that the billion-dollar inheritance held under the excuse of raising them doesn't even come close to the measly 200 stones used as hush money. The malicious strategy was quite simple. If the young man had willingly accepted the adoption, he would have automatically lost all his inheritance rights, and forcing premature independence would also leave him without the protection of the clan's rules. Very worried about the legal loophole, the woman is thankful they managed to fool the more valuable twin but questions what they will do next year if the troublemaker decides to seek independence through legal means and demand the money. Adopting a very dark posture, the man guarantees he will drag the insolent trash to ruin by forcing a shameful expulsion from the family before the deadline, which would nullify all blood rights to the great treasure. Already lying in bed in the shadows of the room, the woman points out a major flaw in the idea, reminding him that the boy is extremely cunning and would hardly make a mistake serious enough to justify banishment. The man's face darkens into a frightening expression as he mocks his wife's slowness, wickedly stating that they can frame him themselves without leaving a trace. While this filthy conspiracy unfolds across the property, the protagonist hears light knocks on the door of his isolated room. Outside, the spy servant sweetly announces that the hot bath water is perfectly prepared for young Master Fang Yuan. Noticing the intentional or unintentional mix-up of identities, Fang Yuan simply maintains his usual cynical demeanor and allows the employee to enter in the dark. Her light steps enter the room as she greets her target in a very restrained and respectful manner. Holding a heavy basin full of towels and water, Shen Kuai lowers her gaze, trying to display an innocence she doesn't possess. A greedy ambition dominates her thoughts, aware that seducing the clan's prodigy would be her masterstroke to secure a future filled with luxury and power. The sound of the torrential rain floods the isolated village as the peasants rest safely under the midnight storm. It's been 3 long days and nights that water has been falling from the skies without the slightest sign of a break for the mountain. On the night the storm began to form, the protagonist was wandering the outskirts, carrying his usual jars of wine among the damp stones. Although he didn't care about the cold in his soaked clothes, the big problem with the downpour was that the water completely washed away the smell of alcohol, which was essential to attract his target. Crouched among the wet rocks, he concluded that forcing an irrational search in the middle of that flood would end up raising too much suspicion about his alcoholic disguise. Treating the risks with great maturity, the manipulator retreated from the territory, knowing that only a complete moron treats the people around him as idiots who are easy to deceive. Back in the safety of his home, he accepts that he won't be able to capture the liquor worm anytime soon, and decides to focus his initial energies on refining the moonlight goo for lack of a better option. With his back to the door, the young man remains static on the floor to begin his intense cultivation work with the backup artifact secured from the academy. Focused on his own internal development, he is not shaken by life's delays, knowing that storms arise from nowhere and fate changes plans in the blink of an eye. As the mediocre capacity of his primeval sea floats in his mind, he reflects that demanding a perfect path of glory without bumps in that unjust world would be a bad joke. This whole magical process requires the continuous consumption of the human's valuable internal essence to force total submission over the will of the small entity. Standing freely on the palm of his hand, the small blue emblem carries the unbreakable laws of nature that now need to be mastered through brute force. Fang Yuan is in the process of refining his moonlight goo, but the creature resists strongly, causing his control to drop to 44%. 3 minutes pass, and his progress plummets to a measly 2%. Forcing the connection, he manages to recover 10% of the bar after 10 minutes of continuous effort. Just then, the small moon-shaped artifact shines intensely, refusing to yield. The magical beast's persistent resistance throws his control back to square one, wearing the young man out. 30 long minutes are left behind in this intense mental struggle. Even with strategic breaks, the bright blue entity doesn't stop fighting against the refinement. Observing the creature float in his hand, the boy concludes how complicated it is to tame a goo. He calculates that at this aggressive pace, the creature will consume all his primeval essence in 6 hours, resetting his progress to 0. Sitting in the dark room, the cultivator compares this ordeal to a battle of attrition between two armies, lamenting that he has already spent 3/4 of his energy to dominate only half of the beast. To secure his own gains without giving the target a chance to recover, the warrior needs to constantly replenish his internal sea. After all, this forced control serves as a rigorous test of skill, demanding patience to endure the long battles for the submission of mystical power. There are only 2 ways to replenish what has been spent, the first being natural recovery over time. The second method involves absorbing energy directly from a stone, but his sad C-grade aptitude soon hits the maximum storage limit in less than half an hour. Staring at the valuable rock between his fingers, the manipulator admits he would never have a chance to win the Academy's tournament competing against the wealth of the leaders, whose resources far surpass his last 6 pieces. Therefore, the former lord decides to redirect his forces to finding the liquor worm instead of the moon creature. But a small sound from the window breaks the silence and catches the reincarnated one's attention. He gets up and realizes that the long storm outside has finally let up after 3 whole days of rain. Immediately after, knocks on the wooden door announce the arrival of an unknown visitor on the sly. Shenkui identifies herself and says she brought food and a hot drink to soothe the young master's heart. With entry granted, the employee carries the meal box into the room with a very submissive posture. Smiling friendly, she tries to start a conversation, commenting on the wonderful aroma wafting from under the lid. Wasting no time, the servant takes out the dishes and starts preparing the meal on the small wooden table. The hot drink is poured carefully, filling the small round pots. Next, she invites the protagonist to sit and makes a point of joining him for a drink that night. Pressing her body intimately against the unshackable young man, the girl swears loyalty and promises to comfort him regardless of his mediocre aptitude test score. The sudden closeness reaches its peak when the employee suggests giving her body to him right then and there. Extending her delicate hand, one of the cups is offered directly to the boy without ceremony. Leaning comfortably against the backrest, the spy tips her own cup seductively to try and capture his attention. However, her gaze can't hide the true intentions behind the whole forced performance. Fang Yuan doesn't back down a single inch and stares at the young spy just a few steps away without changing his expression. Very directly and harshly, he questions how long the girl will continue this useless act under his roof. The surprise sends a chill down the servant's spine, forcing her to swallow hard in the face of failure. She lets out a nervous laugh and plays dumb, pretending not to understand the isolated master's harsh accusations. Tired of the cheap little lies, the reincarnated one acts quickly and grabs the envoy's neck. Frightened and hurt, the employee grabs his hand, demanding he stop this sudden brutality. Pressing the target against the floor structure, the former villain details the scheme orchestrated by his aunt and uncle to use cheap seduction and forge evidence in front of the guests downstairs. The firm grip on her throat tightens as he furiously questions her about what mediocre attraction of her miserable body she thought would work on him. Immobilized on the floor of the dark room, the prey struggles against the crushing suffocation in the gloom. Totally asphyxiated in agony, the intruder tries to find any air that will free her from her deadly sentence. Soon, the fake courtesan yields to the painful reflexes of strangulation and lets out a desperate cough on the dark rug. Grabbing and lifting her terrified chin up, the cultivator announces loud and clear that she is nothing but a pile of dust for his purposes of domination. With her eyes full of terrified tears, Shen Koi cries profusely, realizing there is no pity in that merciless boy. The imposing aura emanating from that room exudes all the dark weight that would make any mortal confuse him with a true, relentless demon pulling the strings of a futile puppet. Returning to his icy calculation, the master imposes a decision and tells the creature to repeat the exact same fake move on the high-level boy who carries his genetic traits to obtain a smooth release from the dirty class system. Concluding the series of commands, the leader expels the woman very curtly. Completely destabilized, the servant leaves, carrying her deep, humiliating shame as she passes through the traditional door, unable to close a good deal. Analyzing the silence maintained after the shameful failure of his lying relatives, he reflects that the current social structure has improved upon the old past tricks of his petty relatives to a degree superior to the original he knew. Walking near the property's railings in the cold breeze, the villain makes a mental note to return the perverse favor of the cowardly trap with brutal precision, at the first ideal opportunity guaranteed for their ruin. Descending the steps rhythmically, his head keeps hammering that any subject flees at the roadside while wolves don't think much before causing total destruction ahead. However, jumping blindly into the darkness of the rural region carrying chronic weakness in his soul's aperture condemns him to a fatal disaster in the field without efficient preparations. Later, he visits the tavern and approaches the owner to probe the private options. The chubby innkeeper smiles, guaranteeing excellent rooms on the upper floor with perks like direct delivery from the kitchens to the upper corridors at any time without any delay in one's rest, if desired. Placing his perfectly counted money on the worn-out counter, he cuts the pleasantries, asking for simple food and a lot of local wine, stressing the quick return of any surplus values generated by his routine daily consumption for himself. Right there near the street, happy for the certain influx of capital into his aged hands at the end of the afternoon, the clerk pulls the plate, questioning in which of the facilities he prefers to receive the banquet he just contracted in the short monetary agreement made earlier over the 2 jars of full-bodied liquid and the complete tableware requested there. Without any fuss, the client declares blankly and chooses the large, popular hall spread across the initial floor of that old restaurant, not wanting to spend his days secluded from the noisy working class masses talking loudly. Turning his back, he slowly heads towards the back, securing a clean table in the smoky room. The entire room fills the air with a gigantic chatter emitted by the large peasant crowd celebrating the stable weather, drinking the common local hook in groups seated on the rectangular benches of the uncomfortable furniture under dim light. Ignoring the idle chat, his thoughts return to the giant need generated by his inferior C-type cultivation, forcing him to seek nothing less than almost entire dozens of the rare rocky pieces to fuel the development of the elementary magical creatures captured by the students, which depletes reserves right away, making the base effort contained in the academic bonus prize useless. Served with sliced and seasoned meats right near the open flames of the furnace in the back, his suspicions turned into cemented convictions that quickly capturing that inheritance forgotten centuries ago by the old urban legend of underworld monks had become the undeniable main key to the unhindered continuation of his growth as a master of magic who carries the intact past engraved in iron and fire, so as not to end up falling among the ranks of mediocre side characters who get taken out for little things in neighborly clashes. Picking up a portion with the rudimentary chopsticks, his reasoning confirms that the answers to the bureaucratic walls lie beneath the earth, and delays in these clues also bury his development. Although focused on the arduous mental work, the young man notes his irritation at having spent 7 consecutive stormy days spreading the stinky bait over the hills and ravines of the village's mountainous area without any visual success of the small mystical worm anywhere around where he stepped. His reflection is cut short when shouting from the central tables erupts, forcing more drink down the throat of the large, burly warrior covered in heavy marks from the fierce hunt recently won by the midnight team in the riparian forest. The hunters noisily celebrate the colossal fall of the tough-skinned jungle monster, begging the innkeeper to take the superior bottles out of hiding for a well-deserved toast on the lively night of profits divided into pieces and stones slammed on the dirty table. Retorting to the aggressive pleas from the sweaty table with a good payer's smile on his face, the elder throws back the exact justification of the high costs of real drinks, awaking inflated furies due to the blatant doubt cast on their pockets full of hard-earned gains. Retreating his defenses before the other's puffed-out chest, the The man shrugs his shoulders, detailing that the units cost the painful fixed rate of an unbelievable 2 complete stones slammed on the wood in exchange for each clay pot full of the house's grape elixir. The sentence lands heavily, melting all the confident shine and opening up paralyzed expressions of extreme dread on the rough faces of those street fighters in response to the insane numbers blasted into their disbelieving ears at such high prices from the shops in the market square of the isolated hole, where they think they are powerful and snobbish. One of the fighters can't handle the violent attack of inflation, throwing the blame on the old man, shouting his suspicions in a loud tone as a cowardly attempt to pull a fast one on the regular clientele with the cynical edge of a scam. At the top of his lungs under the ears of everyone else nearby listening to the stage scene. Fearing the insane loss of their daily bread guaranteed by blood, his comrades close in on the out of control one's shoulders, demanding a calm return to their mediocre reality, telling him to stop burning a fortune for nothing on unreachable luxury tables, before ruin sweeps away the necessary purchases for their next brutal challenges scheduled for the middle of the year. However, on the other side of the round tables, a sneering brute notices the other's weakness, firing off cutting humiliation, telling them to stop their whining and just shut their mouths, picking up their beggar's shame if the cash disappeared from the bag before the showboating ended, without the guts to sustain their past glory face to face. Cut through by the third-party humiliation without any warning from the showy competition. The main subject immediately explodes, shouting for the most precious unit, emptying his primitive sack to shatter the forced shame of the entire team with an absurd expense in the stuffy room, ordering the expensive relics on the counter to be dusted off urgently, smiling at the useless, inflated folly of the fragile ego. The owner caters to the idiocy and quickly leaves for the pantries with hot promises of the guaranteed treasure coming and going. Then one of them slams a stoppered jar hard on the table, causing a silence. Opening the cork in the hall, mystical vapor fills the air, permeating every corner with essences and immediately rebuffing the critics. Everyone is sniffing that aroma that made them shut up. Holding the open jar very carefully, the tavern owner guarantees he wasn't exaggerating and that this is the only place in the entire village selling the desired green bamboo wine. Fang Yuan just observes a commotion in the corner of the hall, confirming the information about the few establishments in that isolated region. The young cultivator breaks into a cold sweat, bitterly regretting having bought the drink on impulse, thinking it's too late to return the merchandise. But the intoxicating smell changes everything, making the leader of the hunters slam his fist on the table and declare that the liquid is excellent and that the round is on him. At this, the young man swallows hard, realizing that the small container won't be enough for 6 thirsty people at the same time. The brute gets up angrily, pointing his finger in the boy's face and calling the guy out for a fight very aggressively. Rolling up his sleeves, Zhang Yai accepts the challenge from the rabble and decides to get up from the table without flinching. A burst of energy takes over the place, leaving all the peasants completely shocked when they realize the kid is a level 1 Gu master. The boy taunts the frightened men, telling the group to bring it on, since they wanted a brawl so badly in front of everyone. The arrogant hunter loses all his composure in an instant and freezes in fear at the absurd difference in power. Taking advantage of the enemy's hesitation, the cultivator lands a strong kick, sending the big guy flying down the stairs without any difficulty. With the mess made on the ground floor, he tosses the coveted jar into the air without caring about the price. Catching the item back easily, the master inhales the aroma, confirming that the product's quality is indeed top-notch. Down below, the defeated bully puts his hands together, begging for forgiveness and offering the drink willingly as an apology for his terrible mistake. However, the young man responds by smashing the clay jar forcefully right in the middle of the kneeling hunter's face. Furious with the group's audacity, the master insults the hunters, questioning if those mere mortals thought they could flaunt primeval stones in front of him. The men cower terrified on the floor, quickly denying any intention of offending the irate cultivator. Trembling with dread, the wounded leader reinforces that disrespecting a lord of that level is a grave sin. As a humble apology, they offer the valuable stones, trying to calm the warrior's fury. The copper plate hanging from his waist indicates the young man's beginner classification, even though he appears to be almost 20 years old. Still, the dense energy emanating from his body makes it clear that he has already reached the upper stage of the initial power level. Observing the subject's weak talent, the protagonist recalls that starting training so late greatly limits the growth of warriors focused on logistics services. But in the real world, the difference in strength between a mage and simple hunters is large enough to demand total submission from the weaker ones. As he continues to eat in silence, Fang Yuan concludes that this is just the relentless nature of the world, where the bigger fish always swallows the smaller one without mercy. Satisfied with the brute display of authority, Zhang Ya decides to end the punishment, thinking the lesson has been very well learned. He turns his back and starts to walk away from the edge of the staircase, leaving the relieved targets behind. With one last dark look over his shoulder, the young man suggests they drink the liquid spilled on the floor, so they don't forget the pathetic role they played there. The icy threat makes the troublemakers shudder in dread on the lower floor, fearing another surprise attack. Only the clay shards mixed with the fragrant smoke remain on the rug, as proof of the public humiliation that occurred. Calmly, the reincarnated one taps his wooden chopsticks, getting the attention of a nearby employee. Not caring about the tense atmosphere in the air, the villain coldly asks the waiter to bring a whole bottle of the coveted green wine. The unusual request leaves the entire hall dumbfounded at the courage to flaunt money right after the violent scene from a few minutes ago. Bothered by the audacity, the goo master turns his head to see who the crazy person is drawing attention right in the middle of his territory. The protagonist holds eye contact with the same neutral expression as always, showing total indifference to the danger. Upon recognizing the boy from the academy, the fighter changes his posture instantly, acting much more receptive and docile. The employee quickly runs across the hall and fulfills the request, delivering the very expensive container to the silent customer at the back table. The waiter bows in respect as he rests the heavy vessel on the worn wooden surface. With the guaranteed item in hand, the former lord leaves the noisy tavern, walking alone towards the darkness of the night. His mind soon flashes back 300 years, remembering the legend of the clan's fourth leader, a legendary genius who carried the village's hopes on his shoulders. Unfortunately, this great hero ended up crossing paths with a dangerous demon known as the Flower Wine Monk. The official story says the threat was defeated after an intense battle, and ended up begging for mercy on his knees in front of the great protector. But in a moment of the victor's distraction, the villain delivered a cowardly attack, forcing them both to a tragic end together. In the memories of his previous life, the reincarnated one knows that in exactly 1 month, a drunk warrior will wander through the forest after being brutally rejected. It will be precisely the strong smell of this alcohol that will attract the much coveted mystical worm wandering the lonely outskirts. Guided by the creature's trail, the bitter man will end up entering a hole and discovering the monk's mortal remains inside a hidden cave. With the new strength acquired from the discovery, the young man's power skyrocketed, and his gold-digging lover came running back into his arms shortly after. The long-haired boy reflects on the holes in this famous story, realizing that many details make no logical sense. In the lucky guy's place, he concludes that no one in their right mind would hand over such a powerful stolen prize to the clan's superiors. The normal thing would be to hide the inheritance for personal gain and completely forget about feudal things like honor and morality in a world driven by self-interest. Now with almost no money in his pouch, the strategist bets everything on this silent search, hoping not to get into serious financial trouble in the coming weeks. The mountain's energy is completely purified after the long, constant storm, leaving the air perfect for spreading the smell of the drink in the swampy region. Taking off the red cap, he confirms that the absence of the worm in the village's common areas was the first piece of this puzzle. Furthermore, the liquid's fame as the best blend in the market serves as the third and final crucial factor for the trap's success. Pouring a little of the alcohol onto a wet rock, the cultivator focuses on the mission, stating that the moment of truth has finally arrived. The attractive smoke spreads quickly among the tall bamboo trunks in the middle of the pitch black forest. Focused on the task, the young man watches the scent disperse, waiting for any sign of stealthy movement in the surrounding vegetation. Patience becomes the only weapon available at the moment as the icy weather punishes his developing body during the harsh early mornings. Unsuccessful at the first planned spot, the manipulator walks through the dry leaves, looking for another clear area to try his luck. Once again, he pours a little of the nectar onto another smooth stone near the river, trying to increase the chances of an unexpected encounter. The distinct smell floods a new section of the valley, creating an invisible web to snag the rare parasite in the gloomy outskirts of the village. Absolute silence continues to dominate the dense forest, leaving no trace of the small worm crossing the paths traced by the night. Insistent in his blind search, the hunter repeats the ritual, pouring the bait all over the green and muddy slope nearby. The exhausting routine of dropping droplets on rocks and waiting in total silence consumes most of the boy's solitary time. Standing in the middle of the icy mists, the boy feels the weight of the container drastically decrease in his calloused hands. Looking into the dark bottom of the jar, the master notes that there is only enough content left for the final play of that plan. Turning the heavy clay pot upside down, he empties the last drop of the drink into the wild undergrowth. The viscous liquid gently hits the petals of a wild flower, splashing fine particles against the other foliage. Slowly, the alcohol runs down the damp stem, reaching the ground covered with weeds and mud without producing any visual effect. A small, shimmering puddle forms in the local humidity, exuding the rest of the exotic aroma on the cold wind coming from the mountains. The protagonist's eyes betray a wave of evident frustration as he notices that there wasn't a single shred of success in his sure bet. Despite having all the temporal and logical advantages in his favor, the pursuit of mystical power simply failed miserably in the continuous darkness. With the empty vessel in hand, the strategist laments the loss of having only 2 coins left, just when he most needs to refine his basic energy for the morning. With no patience for carrying a useless burden, he tosses the hollow jar into the tall grass, discarding the trash without a second thought. With a tired sigh, the ex-villain accepts the irritating unpredictability of fate, where not all great shots align as the perfect theory suggests. Adjusting the cloak on his back, the young man walks away from the place, wandering frustratedly away from that whole failed attempt to find a shortcut. As crickets chirp in the dark forest, the silence of the night once again dominates the environment. Fang Yuan walks through the tall grass under the moonlight, visibly tired after his failed attempt. Walking without haste, the protagonist keeps his gaze fixed on the path ahead, but suddenly a rustle in the bamboos catches his attention as a white glow plummets from above. The reincarnated one's eyes widen as he notices the unusual movement in the darkness. Clinging to the green trunk, there it is, the coveted liquor worm, shining intensely. Hiding behind a rock, the boy realizes that if the critter flies away, he'll never be able to match its speed. However, he remembers that when the insect drinks, it ends up getting drunk and flies much slower, which is the perfect opening. Just then, the creature curls up, forming a shining little ball. Wasting no time, the worm lets go of the bamboo and plummets towards the ground. The impact kicks up some dry leaves as the mystical being lands in the vegetation. Seemingly confused, the big-eyed critter starts to crawl through the weeds. Watching from a distance, the strategist stays hidden in the undergrowth, waiting for the right moment. After a while, the creature finally finds the puddle of wine and gets completely drunk on top of a leaf. Seizing the chance, Fang Yuan slowly pushes the grass aside to get closer. Completely lost, the drunk critter plummets right into the middle of a white flower. The mystical worm's cheeks turn red, barely able to stay steady on the surface. Visibly dizzy, it stumbles from side to side. Trying to take off, the creature's trajectory is warped as it flies completely clumsily. The protagonist just watches the luminous trail move away through the night. Without wasting a second, he charges forward, chasing after the magical light. The frantic chase continues through the dark forest, illuminated only by the moon. Then, the small light disappears in the middle of a dark corridor between the stone walls. Determined, Fang Yuan cuts through the tall grass, running at full speed. He keeps going, tracking the critter's path around the mountain. Stomping hard in the water, the young man crosses a shallow stream without slowing down, until he comes face to face with a huge waterfall gushing water violently from the rocks. Catching his breath, the boy smiles with satisfaction, realizing he has finally found the place. Staring at the waterfall up close, he analyzes the rock structure. Standing on the riverbank, the reincarnated one prepares to investigate what lies behind that liquid wall. Extending his hand, he passes through the curtain of cold water without hesitation. The young man squeezes through a hidden crevice in the rocks right behind the waterfall. Already in the dark interior, water drips from his face as he maintains an alert posture. Stepping on the wet cave floor, he considers the possibility of there being a venomous snake along the way. Walking cautiously through the shadows, the strategist thinks that this could all just be a trap. With an analytical eye, he assesses that the so-called flower wine monk could very well have left something deadly there. The young man continues to advance through the increasingly narrow stone tunnels. But at the same time, he also considers the chance of there being absolutely nothing at the end of the path. Just then, a faint beam of light appears in the darkness, illuminating the top of his head. The protagonist stops suddenly, focusing his attention on a specific point. Pushing hard, he moves a heavy rock that was blocking the passage. His hand grips firmly on the rough edge of the newly opened crevice. Squeezing his body, the boy forces himself through the narrow passage between the walls. Now in a space covered with roots, he notices that he has walked for a good while, and should have already passed the main rock. Assessing the distance covered, he concludes that he must be exactly in the heart of the mountain at that moment. Observing the place, he identifies peculiar flowers and concludes that there are mystical beings with the most varied forms in nature. Without delay, the young man pushes the thick vegetation out of the way with his own hands. Just ahead, a huge dead tree root dominates the center of the rocky chamber. Right in the middle of the twisted wood, a macabre figure rests in silence. The ex-villain gives a slight smile, pushing aside the last branches obstructing his view. With agility, he grabs the drunk worm that was sprawled out on the dry leaves. Carefully, the boy safely tucks the precious creature inside his clothes. With that done, his attention turns completely to the grim structure in the center. A dusty human skeleton is trapped among the thick tree roots. With a confident smile, the protagonist affirms that he has finally found the legendary flower wine monk. Curious about the mortal remains, he extends his hand, wondering if he should touch the bones. But suddenly, he freezes in place, sensing he has been followed there. With a tense look, he wonders if his recent outings have raised suspicion or if his uncle sent a spy. The image of the brute from the tavern crosses his mind as he desperately searches for a quick solution. Gritting his teeth in frustration, the reincarnated one knows he is still just a beginner with no battle worms and is too weak for a direct fight. Using his intelligence, Fang Yuan bluffs out loud, stating that the intruder has already been poisoned by his trap at the entrance and will be gone in 7 days if they don't receive the cure. With a cynical expression, he warns that he might even hand over the liquor worm if the pursuer wants to negotiate. The chamber remains in a disturbing silence as the boy focuses his vision on the rock wall ahead. Unexpectedly, a voice echoes through the cave, begging for its own life and offering anything to the so-called monk. Confused by the situation, the protagonist takes a step back, realizing that something grand is about to happen. Just then, a giant red illusory projection appears in the environment, showing a bald man laughing while humiliating the supposed hero of the clan. The muscular villain in the illusion mocks the defeated warrior, saying he expected more from someone with such a high level. Observing the magical scene, the reincarnated one recognizes that the projected brute is indeed the flower wine monk. Kneeling pathetically on the ground, the prisoner cries desperately, debasing himself to a worm as he pleads for mercy. From the appearance of the humiliated figure, Fang Yuan deduces that this is the famous fourth leader of the clan, and the others in the background are the former elders. The monk in the projection scoffs at their false hospitality, revealing that the leadership tried to poison his drink during a banquet. Furious, the bald man points his finger, shouting that they greatly underestimated someone who carries the title of wine master. He states that if the politicians had cooperated, none of this would have happened. But since they tried to use his head to gain fame, they would now face the consequences. In a panic, the clan leader offers a priceless spiritual spring and a cave full of rare orchids in an attempt to buy his life. Crying hysterically, the ruler swears absolute loyalty, even accepting to become the monk's slave to avoid being ended. Desperate, the village leader shouts that the slavery worm is too precious and is level 5, questioning if the monk really thought he would have won. Just then, the prisoner points out he's already been infected by the gate poison and demands the cure. Trying to bargain for his own life, the ruler promises that the clan will provide 3,000 moon orchids every week, plus another 3,000 primeval stones. Analyzing the offer, the wine master warns that he will make periodic visits to collect the goods and temporarily suppress the poison, sparing his rival's useless life. Completely relieved, the defeated man bows to the ground, thanking him profusely for the mercy he received. The flower wine monk scoffs at that pathetic attitude, stating that he hates those who beg like dogs and questioning if that coward was truly worthy of the title of a level 4 master. But suddenly the invader lets out a groan of pain, feeling something strange weaken his body. Seizing the perfect opening, the clan leader unleashes a cutting blow upwards, catching his adversary completely by surprise. The impact throws the monk back, who spits blood furiously upon realizing the cowardly ambush. Now on his feet and exuding arrogance, the ruler reveals that he used an insect specializing in concealment that restricts the target's primeval C. Cynically, he questions how the enemy could deal with that after already having spent so much energy in the battle. Returning the humiliation, the politician suggests that the warrior surrender obediently and become his servant, guaranteeing that he might even stay alive if he's a good doormat. Consumed by a murderous rage, the monk tells them all to go to heck and charges forward, unleashing a devastating attack. Frightened by his rival's insanity, the leader retreats, ordering his men to take down the invader, calculating that his energy will soon run out due to the magical restriction. Without retreating an inch, the wine master shouts for them all to come and meet their end, starting a brutal slaughter against the clan members. Back in the present, the illusory projection begins to fail, and the shining beetle falls clumsily from the wall. The small insect hits its head and is stunned on the ground while Fang Yuan watches the sudden end of the recording. The magical image displays intense scenes of the violent exchange of blows, staining the entire scene with blood. Bodies are thrown violently as the carnage unfolds without mercy against the village defenders. Stomping firmly on the stone floor, the monk advances, exhausted after decimating the enemy resistance. Covered in the blood of the fallen, the warrior rises victorious before the leader, who is now kneeling once again. Panning, the survivor curses the situation, visibly worn out by the accumulated injuries from the battle. Boiling with hatred, he warns that he will return in the future to deal with all of them once and for all. Wasting no time, the wine master delivers a massive blow, opening a huge passage in the solid rock. The projection shows the ruler begging once more, reminding him that he will turn into a pool of puss in 7 days because of the poison and debasing himself as trash to try and be saved. Standing in the dark cave, the protagonist remains focused on the reddish image of the enemy pleading for mercy. Understanding the whole story behind the mystery, the boy murmurs calmly, confirming his suspicions. The magical beetle continues to shine on a branch, projecting the scene of humiliation, revealing itself to be an audio-video insect left by the monk himself in the past. Evaluating the events of his previous life, the young man deduces that the man who found this place long ago realized the enormous risk of looting everything alone. For fear of being executed by his superiors if they found out, that former discoverer preferred to report the finding to prove his loyalty. Unlike this submissive posture, Fang Yuan decides he will not share the treasure with anyone after all the work he put into tracking the path. With a cold and focused look, the reincarnated one reflects that he doesn't care in the slightest if he ends up being discovered in the future. Stretching his arms relaxedly, the boy thinks that profit only comes to those who take risks, considering the discoverer from the past a huge coward. With his own hands, he breaks the dry branches blocking the center of the area. Stepping over the wooden debris, the strategist advances without hesitation towards his goal. Straight to the point, he reaches the monk's mortal remains, which are still trapped among the thick tree roots. Searching the ancient bones, the young man picks up a small leather pouch that makes a metallic sound as it's lifted. Inspecting the inside of the bag, he finds only 15 primeval stones and curses the dead man for being a stingy old coot. Observing the skeleton more closely, the ex-villain concludes that leaving a few coins wasn't so bad after all, considering the monk spent almost everything trying to heal the damage from the ambush. Sliding his fingers through the dry earth, he notes that magical insects need specific foods to survive, sometimes even requiring sunlight. In the past, the wine master had cultivated wine, sackflowers and rice pouch grass in this exact spot to sustain his worms. Staring at the silent skull, it's clear that the continuous restriction imposed by the leader's trap inevitably dragged the warrior to his end. Over the course of 300 years, almost all of the former owner's creatures perished, leaving only the recording beetle and the liquor worm. The small drunk critter survived only because it lost its main food source when the vegetation withered. Forced by hunger, the liquor worm had to venture out of the cave in search of wildflowers in the forest, which ended up attracting the boy. Having fulfilled its sole purpose, the audio beetle finally drops lifelessly, revealing itself to be a one-time use item. Assessing the profits of the exploration, the protagonist perfectly understands his predecessor's choice. After all, the financial reward there was too small to justify betraying the clan. Recalling his old memories, the protagonist knows that the past invader was already at level 3, which made the modest liquor worm practically useless to him. Pondering the available options, the young man analytically wonders if he should also report everything to the village leaders. The raw, unvarnished truth is that the real treasure of that cave was always the wall, where the recording displayed the humiliation of the former ruler. With his mind working quickly, he realizes that the endlessly repeating image could easily be sold to rival villages. The high command of the neighboring mountains would surely pay a fortune for evidence capable of tarnishing the reputation and causing severe damage to the Guyu clan. Giving a slight smirk, the strategist immediately discards the idea of trusting his family, determined to never again make the naive mistake of depending on other people. Leaving the skeleton behind, the reincarnated one reinforces his philosophy that the only true support in this world is one's own strength. The violent waters continue to cascade from the top of the waterfall, spreading a cold mist through the environment. Now outside, the young man observes the current while reflecting on the false rumors that said the cave was in an underground location. Intrigued by the discrepancy, he questions how the location could be underground when he just came out from inside the mountain wall. Understanding the political manipulation, he deduces that the leadership destroyed the original evidence and spread lies to mislead the residents, which explains why he couldn't find the entrance for 7 days. Walking with firm steps back into the forest, the boy decides that all these past schemes no longer matter. The central objective was successfully secured, and the primeval stones are finally safe in his hands along with the mystical creature. Moving stealthily through the bamboos in the middle of the night, he plans to crash at the inn to focus on taming the insect, which will secure his spot in the academy dorms, so he can keep using the local resources. Calculating his money, the young man recognizes that he can only pay for the room for 1 or 2 more days before going broke. Under the bright light of the crescent moon, Fang Yuan calculates that the 15 newly acquired stones combined with his original 2 result in 17, a miserable amount for a master's needs. Assessing his own body, he laments that his magical aperture is only 44% full due to his limited C-class talent. During the taming process, the energy consumption is violently superior to the natural recovery rate, forcing the desperate use of stones to replenish his reserves. Analyzing the rules of magic, the strategist knows that the weaker a living being's will is, the lower its resistance will be, with a common worm requiring at most 8 coins to be subdued. Completely focused on his new prize, he estimates that taming the liquor creature will cost at least 11 primeval stones, possibly up to 16 in the worst-case scenario. This drunken critter is considerably rarer than the traditional level 1 options, which absurdly increases the difficulty of refinement. Walking through the paved streets of the village, the reincarnated one concludes that the night of training will leave him with only 6 stones left, or almost broke. The young man maintains a serious expression as he walks alone, plotting his next moves in his mind. Firm steps echo on the stone floor, indicating his approach to the resting place. The illuminated inn sign shines invitingly, breaking the darkness of the early morning. Stopping in front of the establishment's main entrance, the protagonist stares at the structure, focused on his immediate task. Without any warning, he knocks hard on the closed double wooden door. An employee answers from inside, complaining loudly about who would be bothering at such an absurd hour. The door creaks as it's unlocked, and the attendant comes face to face with the boy standing in an imposing posture in the shadows. Changing his attitude in the blink of an eye, the man fawns over the young lord with a nervous smile, obediently asking if he wants the kitchen to prepare a late-night meal. Refusing the previous offer, Fang Yuan says he doesn't need it, and just tells the employee to prepare some hot water for him to wash up. The attendant bows quickly, agreeing, and asks the young lord to go to his room, while assuring him that the water will be delivered immediately. As the boy walks away, the man sighs, imagining how wonderful it would be to have the talent to cultivate and become a master. Walking through the dark corridors, the protagonist reflects that magic gives the power to transcend mortals, but the price for this strength is also very high, with the first difficulty being financial resources. As everything requires primeval stones, he concludes that as a master's level increases, the amount of required resources goes up with it, making the path of cultivation extremely difficult without strong support from behind. Now inside the room, a lone candle is lit, illuminating the space. The employee walks slowly down the corridor, carrying a wooden basin full of hot water. Stopping in front of the room's door, he makes a respectful bow and retreats silently. At that, the boy wrings a wet cloth over the basin to remove the excess water. With the damp towel, the ex-villain cleans his own body as hot steam rises in the room. Relaxing against the bed, he finally celebrates the fact that he has gotten his hands on the liquor worm. Sitting on the mattress, the strategist analyzes that this creature is even rarer than the moonlight insect because, in a way, it improves a master's latent talent. Carefully, he raises his hand, revealing the small, shining critter in his palm. The worm rests peacefully, emanating a faint bluish aura from its chubby body. Closing his eyes in concentration, the reincarnated one begins to channel his energy as a greenish glow appears on his face. A sphere of green energy forms violently, concentrating all the boy's magical power. Remaining calm, he assesses that his current base is only level 1 initial stage, but the liquor worm will be able to condense his essence to reach the intermediate stage. A benefit too grand to be described in a few words. But the protagonist recognizes that he hasn't completely mastered the creature yet. He first needs to refine it to transform it into his vital insect. Focused on the process, he wonders if he will be able to use the critter freely and refine his energy with maximum efficiency. Reacting to the magic, the small insect floats in the air, enveloped by the greenish currents. The strategist tenses, realizing that the creature has an absurdly strong resistance and is devouring his essence at a rate twice as fast as what's needed to tame the moonlight insect. Boiling with determination, he swears he will master the liquor worm no matter what happens. The candle continues to burn on the table, marking the slow passage of time inside the silent room. The continuous effort makes sweat run down the young man's face, showing the extreme physical exhaustion. Without giving up, the young man continues to force his aura against the shining sphere that traps the mystical animal. Now much shorter, the melted candle shows that the entire early morning was consumed in the refinement attempt. The first rays of sun begin to pierce through the cracks of the wooden window, announcing the dawn. Completely exhausted, the reincarnated one finally understands that this insect was very likely the former monk's vital creature. Analyzing the situation, he deduces that since the past warrior was level 5, the worm also had that same rank but ended up dropping to level 1 due to the lack of food over all these years, although its will remains as firm as a rock. With this realization, the protagonist perceives that he is fighting directly against the persistent determination of the dead monk, which makes mastering it immensely more difficult than taming a common wild beast. Faced with this barrier, the ex-villain concludes that it's impossible to complete the process in a month without the help of a higher-level master to suppress the creature's aura. After calculating the cost, he notes that the 17 stones he possesses won't be enough, and that he will need at least 30 to succeed. Frustrated with the situation, the young man ends the training, acknowledging the problem but determined to refine the worm no matter what. Hungry after the effort, he decides to go downstairs to fill his stomach first and think of a way to get more money. The boy sits alone at a table in the empty hall to have his breakfast. Calmly, he starts eating, picking up a piece of meat. Suddenly, Fang Zheng appears, furiously demanding why his brother is staying at the inn and didn't come home last night. Not giving a damn about the scene, the protagonist continues to chew his meal, completely ignoring his presence. Losing his patience, the rookie demands to know what was done to Shen Kui, complaining that the girl hasn't stopped crying since she left the room, and that it only got worse when he tried to console her. In response, the wine master just casts a silent glance at the annoying boy. Bothered by the indifference, the younger brother stands there, waiting for some justification. Slamming his hands hard on the table, the rookie shouts that the servant was always kind, and that the frustration of having a C-class talent doesn't give him the right to take his anger out on others. In a swift move, the reincarnated one lands a violent slap across the stressed out boy's face. With a look of contempt, the protagonist calls his brother useless, questioning what kind of tone that is to use with his elder, and if he would really turn his back on his own blood for some random servant girl. Shocked by the blow, the young man holds his face and murmurs painfully that his brother had never hit him before. Outraged by the aggression, the boy retorts that it's not his fault if the heavens gave him an A-class talent and only a C-class to his older brother. At that, the protagonist lands another stinging slap, calling the kid a naive fool. Pulling up memories from the past, the ex-villain asks if the rookie remembers who took care of him his whole life after their parents passed and things got tough. Without giving him space, he continues to throw in his face all the times he gave him new clothes, asked the kitchen to prepare extra sweet porridge, and defended the boy from bullies on the street. Boiling with feigned disappointment, the master questions how the kid has the nerve to raise his voice over some random maid, and points out that, since he has adopted their aunt and uncle as new parents, their brotherly relationship means nothing anymore. Feeling the weight of the words, the boy tries to defend himself, stuttering that he has always longed for the warmth of a family since childhood. Cutting the drama short, the reincarnated one turns his back and coldly decrees that from this day on, they are no longer brothers. Frightened by the definitive rejection, the rookie shouts for his older brother, but the protagonist announces that the servant girl is still untouched and proposes a trade the girl for the kid's 6 primeval stones. Cynically, he approaches, saying that love is normal and doesn't need to be hidden, warning that it's no problem if the trade is refused. Desperate to close the deal, the boy accepts on the spot and throws the heavy pouch on the table, confirming that those are his last 6 coins. Holding the payment, the strategist knows perfectly well that one of the stones is only half full because the kid spent energy in recent training, also aware that this money came from their thieving aunt and uncle. Satisfied with the profit, he tucks the leather pouch inside his clothes and tells the boy to leave. Hesitantly, the boy tries to call his brother one more time, but the protagonist shoots a murderous threat, telling the trash to disappear from his sight before he changes his mind. Completely terrified by the pressure, the boy turns around and flees, running out the front door. The wooden door creaks as the stunned boy exits onto the street. He lifts his face, feeling the sun on his body after the tense argument. Soon, excitement takes over the boy as he walks along, thrilled at the thought that he can finally take the servant girl as his own. Standing in the shadows of the entrance, the older brother silently watches the sucker leave. Without showing any emotion, he simply turns his back to the street. The inn attendant approaches hesitantly, asking if the young master wants his food reheated. The ex-villain stops mid-stride, paying attention to the nosy employee. Sensing the heavy atmosphere, the man scratches his own face, indicating that he heard the whole commotion and the stinging slaps at the table. The protagonist assesses the situation coldly, without showing any shame for the scene he just caused. Returning to the table, he sits down calmly and stares at the meal that has now gone cold. In an authoritarian tone, he tells the attendant to take the plates and heat everything up at once. The young man waits in silence with a calm mind after solving another financial problem. Far away, the boy's uncle reacts in shock, asking if his older nephew really said those absurd things. Kneeling on the floor of the mansion, the boy reports intently that the conversation at the inn happened exactly that way. Hearing this, the man seethes with rage upon realizing that his manipulation plan was completely ruined in an unexpected way. The boy's uncle keeps his head down, seething with indignation at the failure of his plan. In a stern tone, he reprimands Fang Yuan, warning that Shen Kuai is the rookie's personal property and should never have been used as a bargaining chip by his older brother, stating that he would have reassigned the servant if the boy had asked earlier. Completely flustered by the scolding, the boy agrees, raising his hands in surrender as he is dismissed from the room. The man then points out that the boy gave all the stones to the protagonist, handing him 6 more coins to replace the loss and demanding that he use the resources to tame his insect and secure first place. Feeling the weight of the demand, Fang Yuan lowers his head, ashamed of the whole situation. Giving no room for tears, the uncle tells the boy to run back to his room and focus on his training because time is running out. Obeying the order immediately, the rookie walks alone down the palace corridor towards his quarters. As soon as they are alone, the man slams his hand violently against the table, venting his fury. Cursing his older nephew as a scoundrel, he complains to his wife that the kid was too cunning to use the employees to force a trade. Trying to calm things down, the aunt argues that it's only 6 stones, but the husband retorts angrily that the boy now has 12, and that's more than enough for his cultivation to progress rapidly, potentially reaching level 2 in 3 years. Seething with frustration, the man explains that the protagonist's low cultivation level decreases his chances of stealing the family inheritance next year, and that's why they need to hinder the boy now to make him fall behind his peers. Following that line of reasoning, he details that the academy only rewards exceptional students, so without the initial resources, the ex-villain will end up stagnating for good. With this vicious cycle in mind, the uncle plans to see if the kid will be able to reach the intermediate stage of level 1 in a year, while the wife questions why her husband, being level 2, is so afraid of the threat. Losing patience with his wife, the man calls her ignorant and asks if a veteran like him should openly suppress the younger ones, slamming the table again as he explains that reclaiming the inheritance is the boy's legitimate right and can therefore only be blocked using the clan's rules. At this, the woman finally understands the plan, and recalls that to take over the head of the house at 16, one must have reached the intermediate stage of level 1. Finalizing his train of thought, the uncle admits that Fang Yuan is too intelligent calculating, lamenting that the idea of using Shen Kai to cause trouble ended up netting the boy 6 primeval stones. Observing the full moon through the window, the conspiracy leader wishes his genius nephew were so easy to manipulate, instructing his wife to treat Fang Zheng better from now on because of his A-class talent and the obvious dissatisfaction he harbors for his older brother. 2 days pass in the silent village as the aunt and uncle's nightly plans remain focused on turning the rookie's grudge into the perfect weapon against the protagonist. Meanwhile in his room, the ex-villain continues to sit on the bed, intensely focused on his magical training. The liquor worm floats in the air, exhausted after the boy spent 2 whole nights and 12 primeval stones, managing to complete only a tiny fraction of the taming process. Calculating the time with his eyes closed, the strategist is certain that the other students will manage to refine their insects in the coming days. But he doesn't care about falling behind as long as he secures his special creature. Suddenly, the small, shining critter begins to emit erratic pulses of energy from its body. An immense magical vortex opens violently in the air, spinning out of control. Surprised by the abrupt reaction, the young man opens his eyes, realizing that the worm is counterattacking with full force. Maintaining a firm posture, the reincarnated one decides to bet everything on this last attempt, knowing that withstanding this onslaught will definitively break the creature's resistance. Clasping his hands with agility, he concentrates all his aura into the process, fully aware that any minimal distraction will ruin days of effort. A thunderous shockwave explodes through the room, forcing the boy to hope that no one appears in the hallway to investigate the noise. In the center of the dark vortex, a blinding light erupts, accompanied by a sharp, metallic sound. Breaking through the storm of energy, the majestic form of a giant cicada emerges, floating in the air. Completely shocked by the unexpected appearance, the protagonist immediately recognizes that this is the legendary spring-autumn cicada. The face of the mystical insect emits a pulsating and intimidating glow in the midst of the chaos. With a powerful beat of its wings, the cicada shoots towards the ceiling, cutting through the magical currents like paper. The young master follows the insect's ascent as the light projects strong shadows in the room. The dark energy continues to spin violently around, forming a dense storm of power. Liquid waves form in the center of the vortex, emitting strange sounds as the pressure increases. A luminous explosion breaks through the dark core, expanding the creature's force in all directions. Facing the magnitude of the magic, the protagonist keeps his eyes locked on the visual spectacle without retreating. The collision of auras creates a chaotic and destructive trail that completely dominates the boy's vision. As the dust settles, he reflects with relief that the miraculous insect was not a one-time use item and had actually returned in time with his soul. This creature was the first level 6 worm the wine master had refined in his previous life after burning through 30 years of unimaginable resources. However, right after completing the refinement in the past, the warriors of the righteous factions sensed the threat and united to execute him. Analyzing his own energy, the reincarnated one concludes that the 500-year journey through time nearly destroyed the insect's life force, leaving it in such a deep sleep within his body that it was impossible to track its presence. Looking at the details of its carapace, it's evident the health of his past life companion remains critical. The sudden awakening only happened because the liquor worm's attack threatened the safety of the boy's body, activating the sleeping cicada's defense instincts. Landing gently on its master's palm, the ancient being shows it is on the brink of demise. It's so weak. With a sigh of relief, the young man mentally thanks his old secret weapon for being so weakened. He assesses that if the cicada were at the peak of its power, the gigantic pressure would instantly explode his fragile level 1 magical aperture. Reviewing his recent choices, the ex-villain remembers that he abandoned the moonlight insect to suffer trying to tame the liquor worm and make it his main creature. But realizing the irony of the situation, the boy notes that he was already carrying a vital insect, all along without knowing it. The frightening reality is that the legendary spring-autumn cicada already occupies this prominent position within his body. Sporting a dark aura, the protagonist notes how absurd it is for a mere beginner master to possess control of a sacred level 6 monster. Comparing the options, he recognizes that the drunken critter was an excellent choice, but next to the grandeur of the cicada, it's nothing but useless trash. Letting out a laugh of pure satisfaction, the strategist knows that his true vital insect's ability is Rebirth, but activating it in its current state would be suicide for the animal. However, he looks at the liquor worm with a malicious glint, knowing that even wounded, the cicada still maintains its intimidating level 6 aura, which can be used without causing physical damage. Releasing a microscopic fraction of this crushing presence, the ancestral insect emits an imperceptible hum of domination. The small, chubby critter begins to tremble uncontrollably, feeling the weight of a supreme predator in the environment. Taking advantage of the opening caused by the absolute terror, the young man moves his fingers, manipulating his energy currents. The magical waters envelop the terrified worm in a merciless embrace of total domination. Unable to offer any resistance under the dread of the ancestral aura, the creature is easily imprisoned by the boy's blue shackles. With an intense glow covering the little animal's body, the refinement process is finally completed with perfect success. A ray of light plummets from the top of the vortex, diving into the depths of the boy's magical aperture. The newly subjugated insect slides down the energy current towards its new home. Collapsing exhausted onto the pool of spiritual water, the little critter closes its eyes, completely drowsy after the psychological battle. With the dominated creature resting peacefully, the protagonist decides he will need to alter all his future plans because of the return of the miraculous cicada. This silent revelation of the ancestral monster has just given him an absurd advantage that he could never have predicted in his original calculations. Determined to test the limits of this power, he pulls out the moonlight insect he had abandoned. The crushing oppression of level 6 breaks through the weak insect's defenses in less than 5 minutes, consuming very little energy, which contrasts absurdly with the several stones and entire days spent in the previous attempt. The young man closes his eyes, feeling the magic of the moon peacefully merge with his mind after its immediate surrender. A pillar of light descends swiftly through the room, striking the reincarnated one's forehead. The mark of a waning moon shines in the center of his face, marking the perfect submission of the basic creature. Full of arrogance, the master recognizes that with the cicada in control, the task of taming smaller insects has become as ridiculous as asking for divine help. Turning his back on the leftovers of the training, he concludes that by using the aura suppression technique, his C-class talent is no longer a problem, as he will no longer have to foolishly burn through primeval stones to overcome the animal's resistance. The nocturnal silence dominates the external view of the houses as the strategist celebrates the twist of fate that has put him back in the running for the Academy's top prize. 15 minutes later, 3 loud and hurried knocks echo on the wooden door of the instructor's dormitory, breaking the clan's silence. Waking up with a start, the elder sits up in bed, grumbling irritably about which lunatic would be knocking on the door in the middle of the night. Kneeling on the wooden floor, the subordinate reports that a student from this year's class has already finished refining the moonlight insect. Remembering that he received orders to report the first name that appeared, regardless of the time, the elder hastily puts on his robe in the room and mutters that it really happened, asking if the winner was the rookie Fang Yuan. At this, the employee agrees, keeping his hands clasped, explaining that he ran there as soon as he heard the news, and that the champion seems to be someone from the Fang family. Upon opening the door, the instructor laughs, deducing it could only be an A-class talent genius given the time it took, pointing out the B-class students would fall behind even if they received primeval stones. The academy corridor remains silent, with lanterns illuminating the path in the middle of the night. Approaching the student by surprise in the hallway, the subordinate is startled, questioning the boy after hearing his name is Fang Yuan and not his younger brother's. Oblivious to the conversation, the veteran approaches, walking calmly on the rug towards the two. He gets close, full of pride, and praises the boy, thinking it's the rookie, laughing as he extols that he is a true genius and that the others will never be able to compare to his level. Unfazed, the protagonist informs the superior that he is mistaken, revealing his true identity and pointing out that the praised boy is just his younger brother. The shock of the revelation makes the elder plant his feet on the ground and directly question if he is really Fang Yuan. Receiving a confirmation on the spot. Still disbelieving, the man asks if it was really him who mastered the clan's magical creature. Maintaining a serene posture, the reincarnated one simply nods his head in silence. The instructor quickly assesses the situation and concludes that he is then the first-place winner of the entire group. With great coldness, the ex-villain replies that if no one arrived there before him, that seems to be the case. The sun finally illuminates the village mountains as the boy details that he cultivated without rest for the past few days, spending 2 stones and pulling in all neither to complete the refinement. Running breathlessly up the stone steps, the rookie repeats in his mind that he has A-class talent and trained too hard for anyone in the clan to be faster. He remains firm on the ascent, remembering the promise he made to his parents that he would never disappoint them. Completely determined, the boy thinks that from this day on, all those who underestimated him, including his older brother, will be forced to admire him. When he arrives at the entrance, one of the employees mistakes him, asking why Fang Yuan has returned, which annoys him, and he questions if his older brother was there just a moment ago. The confusion tries the boy's patience, and he shouts that his name is not that, demanding they stop talking about his brother. Immediately after, he clasps his hands in a formal greeting and introduces himself full of confidence, announcing that he has mastered his vital insect to claim the top prize. The subordinate's eyes widen in complete surprise upon confirming the student's true identity. At this, the man informs him that the boy arrived one step too late, revealing that his older brother showed up in the middle of the night to meet the elder and took the reward away. Completely incredulous, the younger brother loses control, asking how the main prize ended up in the hands of someone with C-class talent. But the employee assures him that the news is serious and argues that they would never joke about such an important academy matter. He explains that everything has already been validated by the leader and that the official list will be released soon, finding it strange that the protagonist didn't announce his victory at home. The weight of the revelation paralyzes the young man in the middle of the illuminated courtyard as the two men watch him from a distance. With his face covered by shadow, the boy is stunned, trying to process how that impossible defeat happened. Frustrated with the result, he clenches his fists, lamenting that he tried so hard while the other was out drinking, finding it an absurd injustice to lose the top spot. The echo of his indignation spreads through the mountains as the boy screams, submerged in his own hatred. The wooden plaque displayed at the academy officially nails the protagonist's name at the top of the student rankings. The mansion's lavish roof contrasts with the village gossip, where people find it impossible and absurd that an A-class talent lost to a C-class student. Meanwhile, inside the main residence of the Mo family, a servant bows in respect before the leader seated at the back of the hall. Holding his teacup calmly, the head of the house asks if his grandson has stopped trying to master the moonlight insect. The employee regretfully informs him that the young master lost his motivation upon hearing the test result, as he was shaken to see a superior talent crushed by a C-class. In a stern tone, the patriarch forbids weak excuses, stating that the path of cultivation is full of difficulties and that the ex-villain only won by pure luck. Maintaining a rigid posture, he points out the creature the boy chose had a weak magical will, noting that if his grandson lets himself be defeated by something so silly, he will never be able to lead against the rival family in the future. Far away, the sound of a heavy footstep marks the wooden floor in one of the luxurious rooms of the neighboring house. In the Chi family residence, the heir enters the dark room and makes a respectful bow, greeting his grandfather. Aware of the gossip, the family elder informs the boy that he called him to prevent the news from affecting his performance, reinforcing that the protagonist's victory was because his insect had a much inferior mental defense. He assures him there is no reason to worry and tells his grandson to focus on his financial advantage, promising that the lack of resources will make the C-class master stagnant for good and cease to be a threat in a short time. Excited by the explanation, the boy thanks him for the advice and says he will go back right now to finish his refinement training. Satisfied with the response, the old man promises full support and reveals he will use his own level 3 aura to crush the little animal's magical resistance without anyone knowing. After 10 days of isolated training, the entire class gathers again in the center of the courtyard surrounded by trees. The instructor walks in front of the students and highlights the importance of that creature as an absolute symbol of the clan, asking for the full attention of the majority who chose it as a battle partner. Raising his open hand, the veteran announces he will demonstrate the classic attack method, warning that even those who chose other insects should watch, because the basics apply to various magics. He guides them step by step, asking everyone to move their energy directly to the center of their palm with the intention of activating the creature. The magic reacts to the flow, generating an intense blue glow in the shape of a crescent moon, accumulated under the man's control. Observing the phenomenon up close, the students are amazed and let out murmurs, praising the illuminated beauty of the technique. In a swift downward motion, the instructor orders the shot, launching the sharp energy through the air. The luminous spell cuts through the distance, flying in a straight line with a powerful bluish trail. The blade strikes the straw dummy dead on, tearing its entire body in half in a single horizontal blow. With the fatal impact, the upper half of the target topples to the ground, causing a dull thud on the stone floor. The group of youths is ecstatic with the incredible demonstration, but in his past life, the protagonist had already reached level 6 on the demonic path, founded gigantic sects, and trained thousands of people. staring at the scene with absolute boredom. The ex-villain considers the skills of that level 3 instructor to be just the harmless play of an inexperienced child. The elder resumes command of the class, telling all who have already mastered the creature to take a step forward from the line. Spreading the students across the training grounds, he orders each one to take a straw target and practice their throws, releasing the magical blades. The blue glow reappears in the boys' hands as they try to imitate the power accumulation taught by the veteran. A chaotic rain of blades begins to fly across the courtyard as the inexperienced students desperately shoot in all directions. The magics cut through the space in completely random directions, missing the marks by a long shot. Exhausted by the gigantic energy expenditure, one of the boys complains that the attack process is too difficult as sweat runs down his face. The instructor observes the pathetic performance of the class, keeping his hands crossed behind his back in a patient and calculated posture. Several blue blasts continue to fly crookedly, colliding uselessly against the walls with no precision at all. Ignoring the scandalous mess around him, the reincarnated one calmly prepares, accumulating the mystical glow with ease. Right behind, his younger brother watches the protagonist's movement from the corner of his eye, with a bitter expression of rivalry. The spiritual crescent moon condenses perfectly in the ex-villain's palm, marking his absolute control over the energy. In a quick and surgical forward slash, he swings his arm, launching the spell straight into the whirlwind of failed attacks. The attack glides at a frightening speed, dominating its trajectory through the air. The magic strikes the dummy's neck, sinking violently into the firm structure of straw and wood. The torn fibers separate with the impact, revealing the astonishing penetration power of the blade. However, the target is a plant-type parasite insect focused on natural recovery, which immediately activates its healing cords to close the brutal opening. Since the damage didn't split the entire body in half with a single cut, the dummy ties the straw back to normal in an instant, drawing everyone's attention to the brilliant shot that almost destroyed the target. The elder notices the perfect shot and questions if the hit came from the boy facing him, admitting in his thoughts that it was too chaotic to be sure. But the angle could only have come from that direction. Sweating nervously under the instructor's pressure, the lying boy confirms he was the one who cast the spell, stuttering nervously in an attempt to steal someone else's credit. Upon hearing his peer's false confirmation, the young heir of the other family seethes with envy, gritting his teeth and swearing to himself that he will not lose the contest against him. Staring at the protagonist from afar, the younger brother sighs in relief, deducing that he wasn't the author of that perfect throw. In his thoughts, the rookie reaffirms that his older brother only won the previous test by getting lucky with his insect choice, vowing to defeat him soon. Oblivious to the family rivalry, the instructor rests his hand on the lying boy's shoulder and praises his performance, encouraging him to keep striving to master the attack. He then turns to the rest of the class and tells everyone to pay close attention to their homework, announcing he will evaluate the results in 3 days. To motivate the students, the elder promises a reward of 10 primeval stones to whoever has the best performance. The promise of easy money instantly inflames the students, drawing shouts of excitement and uncontrollable greed from the young apprentices. 3 minutes after the exciting announcement, the class comes to an end, and the training courtyard slowly begins to empty. Already feeling the weight of the training, one of the lower talent students grumbles in frustration as sweat drips down his face, complaining that each shot consumes 10% of his magical essence. Another boy agrees in a desperate tone, lamenting that the energy cost is too high for someone with only C-class talent, as his total reserve barely allows him to launch 3 blades before being completely depleted. Observing the complaints from afar, the veteran notes that this is precisely the overwhelming advantage of the clan's geniuses, pointing out that mastering that technique boils down to exhaustive repetition. Reflecting on the cruelty of the system, he understands that the more talented students have gigantic reserves and recover quickly, while the weaker ones can only compensate for this flaw by spending valuable stones. With that, the low-talent broke apprentices are left completely hamstrung, unable to train even if they really want to. The sun begins to set behind the mountains, painting the sky orange, as the instructor sighs in disappointment at the unjust reality of cultivation, deciding that the best thing to do is to focus his attention only on the high-ranking students. Descending the long stone stairs in the middle of the forest, the group of students chats, making plans to go for some wine, while some mention they need to stop by the academy store to buy straw dummies for home practice. Keeping his distance from the noisy group, the ex-villain descends the steps alone and in silence, just listening to the gossip around him. In the late afternoon, a simple wooden sign hanging on the facade indicates the entrance to the academy's commerce room. The activity around the courtyard remains intense even as night approaches, with several students circulating through the lantern-lit premises. Walking with slow steps, the protagonist finally enters the rustic establishment, approaching the service counter. On the other side of the counter, The veteran employee hears the sound of approaching footsteps, while distractedly rummaging through a bag of supplies. Upon turning and recognizing the customer, the young man adopts a friendly posture and greets the protagonist, calling him Junior. Without showing much emotion, the boy returns the greeting politely, calling the attendant Senior. The wind gently sways the store's sign, marking the calm weather outside the establishment. Grabbing one of the training targets, the seller asks if the freshman came to get a straw dummy, slyly warning that he can hold one for 3 primeval stones. He tries to pressure the sale by claiming that the stock is flying off the shelves, and that soon there will be nothing left. The ex-villain just listens to the seller's pitch in silence, mentally calculating that the actual production cost of that material was no more than 1.5 stones, concluding that the veteran knows very well how to exploit others' desperation. The blatant proposal generates immediate outrage among the other students in the store, who start protesting, demanding that the first-come, first-served rule be respected, not wanting to miss the chance. One of the nervous boys throws 3 stones on the counter and tells the employee to hand over the target right away. The chaos of the freshmen fighting over the products amuses the seller, who laughs as he collects the payments at the store's door. Turning his attention back to the protagonist, the young man assumes an air of superiority and reveals that he has an extra dummy hidden under the chest, warning that this is the last chance to buy. Completely ignoring the sales pitch, the reincarnated one curtly states that he just wants to buy 10 petals of the moon orchid. The brutal break in expectation leaves the employee completely speechless for a moment, confused by the refusal of the most coveted item of the moment. With no way to insist, the attendant opens a noisy wooden drawer, revealing several neatly organized packets of herbs. He takes out one of the sealed envelopes and hands it to the boy, maintaining a professional posture, asking the customer to confirm the exact quantity of 10 petals. The young man evaluates the package in silence with his always focused and unshakable gaze. With the transaction finalized, the protagonist turns his back and walks away from the counter with the item in hand, while the deceitful seller celebrates in the background, cheering his easy profit for the day. The cultivation routine demands rigorous care, as all magical insects need to be constantly fed with extremely peculiar diets, like the moonlight creature which requires daily meals based on orchid petals. Meanwhile, the liquor parasite survives only by drinking high-quality wine, consuming an entire jar of green bamboo drink every 4 days to stay healthy. Much more bizarre than the others, the legendary spring-autumn cicada sleeping in his core depends on absorbing the mystical water from the river of time itself to slowly restore its life force. Having a solitary meal at the inn, the boy silently calculates his expenses, remembering that a single primeval stone buys 10 petals, but his attack insect consumes almost half of that every day. Maintaining his cold expression, he concludes that the cost keep his 2 magical partners healthy drains almost his entire precious daily budget. Tapping his fingers on the table impatiently, the reincarnated one reviews his recent profits, adding up the stolen treasure, the money extorted from his own younger brother, and the Academy's reward, which had raised his savings to over 40 stones. However, the initial expenses for refining the insects and the high cost of living took a heavy toll on his wallet, leaving his current balance quite compromised. Opening the small cloth pouch in his hands, the ex-villain sighs heavily upon realizing he has only 20 stones left to survive on. Entering his dark room at the Academy, he plans his next steps, knowing that his aunt and uncle have cut off his allowance for good, with only the weekly subsidy offered by the clan remaining. The boy decides he needs to get noticed in the throwing exam to get his hands on the special prize of 10 coins. Later, the innkeeper respectfully approaches the young man at the establishment's counter to pass on an important notice. Very friendly, the man explains that the neighboring village's merchant caravan will soon pass through the clan and buy up the entire stock of green bamboo wine. Knowing that the customer is very fond of this drink, he decided to warn him before it's all gone. The news catches the protagonist by surprise, as feeding the liquor worm with low-quality drink would require an absurd volume of jars every day, which would certainly raise unnecessary suspicion at the Academy. To avoid any future problems, the boy doesn't think twice and tells the merchant to set aside 5 jars of the good wine immediately, ordering employee to carry the goods to his dorm. 3 days fly by, and the martial arts class begins with the professor demonstrating dodges, quickly ducking to escape a direct punch while teaching the importance of counter-attacking at the right time. Taking advantage of the opening left by the reckless opponent, the bald master lands a powerful punch directly to the target's abdomen, explaining that one should not be afraid of impulsive aggressors, who attack by swinging their arms without thinking. The combat master's foot scrapes firmly on the stone floor, ensuring a solid base to continue his furious attack. In the blink of an eye, he unloads a brutal sequence of heavy punches against the sturdy structure of the wooden training dummy. A final violent cross hits the target dead on, shattering the wood and proving the devastating impact of the brute force body technique. The frantic pace of the demonstration leaves some of the freshmen exhausted and uninterested, letting out sighs of boredom in the middle of the audience. Ignoring the boring class, the group of students starts gossiping about the impending magic throwing evaluation, grumbling that even with home practice using purchased targets, their hit rate is still a total failure. The students' disrespect doesn't go unnoticed by the professor, who stops his movement with his face covered in sweat and an expression of pure irritation. With no patience for the lack of discipline, the instructor lets out a bellow, telling everyone to shut up immediately and pay attention to the class, giving the gossiping group a good scare. Regaining focus, the bald man positions himself in front of the bleachers and seriously lectures that the fundamentals of martial arts are the most vital thing for the survival of any cultivator at the beginning of their career. Raising his voice to demand respect, he adopts a new combat stance, extending his arm forward and ordering the freshmen to focus their eyes on his movements. Answering the call of the training, a heavy wooden machine slides quickly across the courtyard floor to serve as the new opponent for the demonstration. The veteran faces the giant machine with total coldness, teaching that one should not retreat from larger enemies in a direct confrontation. As soon as the dummy's articulated arm comes down in a crushing blow, the professor quickly jumps to the side, dodging the fatal attack by a hair's breadth. Wasting no time, he charges at the machine's legs, grabbing its base with all his strength, explaining that destroying the aggressor's center of gravity is the smartest strategy to follow. The violent push throws the heavy dummy onto its back on the ground with a thunderous thud, raising a cloud of dust in the courtyard before the attentive eyes of the students. Mounting the fallen structure, the master mercilessly lays down a beating with relentless punches, guaranteeing that any opponent without magical defense would be massacred in an instant under those conditions. Despite the professor's effort, exhaustion takes over the bleachers, and the students start to nod off, leaning on each other, losing focus on the repetitive combat theory. The master notices the general lack of motivation and just laments in his thoughts that all classes are the same, seduced by shiny magics and blind to the vital importance of a well-trained body. Something they will only learn the hard way in the future. Not giving in to the freshman's boredom, he continues to give valuable tips, telling everyone to focus their vision on the opponent's shoulders during a physical fight, as this part of the body always moves before any punch or kick. In the midst of the uninterested crowd, the protagonist observes the master's movements with an analytical eye, recognizing that the veteran's intention is pragmatic, but his lack of teaching skill turns the class into a messy, unfocused affair full of excesses. He knows from personal experience that real confrontations are divided into long and short range, and that close quarters combat is extremely common since the effective power of low-level magics usually doesn't exceed a distance of 10 meters. Thinking completely logically, the ex-villain ponders that a basic attack drains an absurd amount of vital energy, which makes martial arts the only real guarantee of survival when the magic tank runs out in the middle of an ambush. Keeping his knowledge hidden from everyone, the boy reflects, finding it a pity that most of these inexperienced youths will need to take a lot of beatings from real life to finally understand that physical strength is the most reliable weapon of all. With a change of scenery, the elder responsible for magical instruction takes the center of the courtyard and announces that the time for the great evaluation has come, ordering the students to divide into groups of 5 and fire 3 spells each. Under the veteran's command, the blue blasts tear through the air with speed, cutting through the space illuminated by the morning sky. The visual impact of the magic is impressive, but most of the blades miss the target by a wide margin due to the beginner class's poor aim. Evaluating the tragic performance of the first squad, the elder shakes his head negatively, pointing out that the hit rate was a complete disaster, as only 2 managed to fire their spells with even minimal correctness. In a collective scolding, he tells the boys to train twice as hard from now on if they want to have any future, sternly pointing at the students who had the worst performance in the test. Demanding agility in the roll call process, the veteran shouts for the next squad of 5 students to take their shooting positions. Walking with an extremely arrogant posture, the young heir of the Mo family celebrates with self-confidence that his time to shine has finally arrived. With the swagger of someone who has mastered the exercise with his eyes closed, the rich boy steps forward with his left foot, planting his boot on the stone floor, ready to steal the show at the school exam. With a quick movement, the rich young man fires his shining magic at the target. He brings his arm down firmly, guiding the trajectory of his attack. The blade of energy tears through the air at high speed. The blow hits the training dummy square in the chest, kicking up smoke. Watching the scene, the elder praises the young man's good performance. Soon after, Guyuchi Cheng steps forward, positioning his feet on the courtyard for his turn. Confidently, he concentrates his magical energy, ready to launch his offensive. The student fires a rapid sequence of luminous blows towards the target. All the blades hit the straw machine's chest, causing a nice impact. At this, the young man gives a slight, completely satisfied smile. The boy casts a provocative glance while his rival colleague just huffs in irritation. It's Gu Yu Fang Zheng's turn to take his testing position before everyone. In the crowd, the students are unsure which of the twin brothers is there, until they conclude it's Fang Zheng, because of the heavy expression on his face. Focused, the young man decides to aim directly at the target's chest, as it's the most guaranteed area to score points. Gathering all his energy, he launches the magic blade with force. The magic violently scrapes against the dummy's shoulder, missing the main target. The near failure leaves the entire class with their mouths wide open in an instant. Analyzing the movement, the elder lets out a murmur, following the boy's performance. Swaying nervously, Fang Zheng breathes a sigh of relief for having escaped a total disaster. Trying to shake off the nervousness, he tells himself to stay focused so he doesn't embarrass himself. With his posture corrected, the student fires 2 more consecutive blades through the air. Seeing the improvement, the professor nods in approval of the hits. In the bleachers, the class bets that the top 3 will be the day's winners, but the subject soon changes when they realize who is next to present. Walking with his usual tranquility, Fang Yuan approaches the shooting area. The veteran stares at the protagonist seriously, remembering who he is. Seizing the opportunity, Qi Cheng taunts that the previous victory was pure luck, and that now the failed genius will show his true skill. Observing the scene, Fang Zheng clenches his fists, mentally assuring himself that he has trained hard and will finally surpass his older brother. Ignoring the pressure around him, the ex-villain just raises his hand, unleashing his power. He makes a clean cut in the space with a smooth movement of his arm. The blast goes straight for the training dummy's neck. Believing the shot went wide, the students burst out laughing, mocking the boy's aim. The master shakes his head in disappointment, concluding that the reincarnated one's previous success was just an accident, and that the younger brother will be the true first-place winner. Standing with his back to the crowd, the protagonist remains motionless under the light breeze. He shows not the slightest concern for the jokes and judgment of his peers. Preparing his second attack, the young man concentrates even more power in the palm of his hand. Seeing this, the younger brother celebrates internally, thinking that victory is already guaranteed as there are few chances left. Clenching his hand tightly, he promises himself that he will keep winning until he erases this oppressive shadow from his heart. At this, the protagonist fires an arc of energy much larger and denser than normal. The blow cuts through the academy space with absurd speed. The blade hits the weak point on the training dummy's neck exactly. The precise impact leaves the younger brother in absolute shock. Immediately, the entire courtyard panics at the brutal result of the attack. The target's structure cracks under the devastating pressure of the magic. Unable to resist the damage, the dummy's head is decapitated and falls to the ground with a dull thud. Completely shaken, the elder wonders if that was an unbelievable accident or pure mastery. Trembling from head to toe, Fang Yuan's brother cannot accept the crushing defeat. Maintaining his icy aura, the winner remains in absolute silence with his back to the group. He just lifts his face, observing the falling leaves, finding the light of that afternoon enchanting. The sun begins to set behind the mountains, marking the end of the activities. Regaining his composure, the professor calls the protagonist's name. The veteran hands the bags full of primeval stones directly into the champion student's hands. He gives a quick piece of advice, asking the boy to continue striving in his daily studies. In the back of the class, Qi Cheng grits his teeth in anger, unable to accept the situation, while the others try to find an excuse for what happened. Calmer, the elder addresses everyone, announcing that in the coming days he will teach how to nurture the magical aperture to level up. The master explains in detail that level 1 apprentices have green copper essence, level 2 use red iron, and level 3 manipulate the coveted white silver essence. Raising his voice, he reinforces that cultivation is the foundation of power and promises a prize of 30 stones for whoever reaches the middle rank first. The veteran also announces that in 3 months, they will choose the class leaders, with generous weekly rewards for the positions. The revelation of the payment gets the boys in the class extremely excited. Concluding the matter, the instructor dismisses the students for the day. Excited by the financial opportunity, the wealthy heirs already plan to conquer these leadership positions at any cost. Walking through the courtyard, Qi Cheng reflects that the money doesn't matter as much as the glory and status of being far above the other students. Following the same logic, Fang Zheng calculates that becoming the class leader will make him evolve faster, forcing his brother to finally bow before him in the future. Leaving the academy, the young man suddenly realizes that the protagonist has disappeared from the group. Far away, the reincarnated one internally muses on how power and status are just illusory rewards dangled to ensure blind obedience. He knows very well that in any organization, there is a hierarchy designed to squeeze the effort from the bottom to feed those at the top. Analyzing society, the ex-villain concludes that these positions are just invisible strings used by the clan to create false values of honor. The undeniable truth of the world is that the entire class system boils down to one essential thing. At the foundation of any sex existence, what really matters is the distribution of resources. Just as plants perish without water and humans succumb without food, the lack of magical sustenance means total ruin. For a cultivator in this merciless world, primeval stones represent the very guarantee of survival. Arriving at the main school gate, a group of students finds the protagonist blocking the passage with an intimidating posture. Confused by the scene, they stop walking, not understanding what that talentless student is doing standing in the middle of the path. Without showing any emotion, the boy dryly announces he's holding a stick up and that everyone must hand over one stone before they can leave. The absurd declaration immediately infuriates the students, who start yelling, asking if he has gone completely insane, trying to extort the entire class by himself. Furious at the audacity, one of the boys tells him to get out of the way, threatening to send him flying with a beating if he doesn't clear the path. Wasting no time on empty threats, the protagonist lands a brutal slap across the stressed-out boy's face before he can even finish advancing. The impact throws the student to the ground, completely knocked out, leaving the rest of the group in shock to see that the talentless peer actually had the guts to attack first. Outraged by the situation, one of the boys shouts that they have the numbers and encourages the entire class to jump the reincarnated one to teach him a lesson. With that, several students charge forward furiously at the same time, trying to crush the lone boy with brute force. Maintaining absolute calm, Fang Yuan dodges the first attack, firmly grabbing the aggressor's arm. Using the opponent's own momentum, he throws the boy far away with a fluid motion. Without breaking his fighting rhythm, the ex-villain follows up with a heavy blow, taking down another classmate who was trying to grab him from behind. Immediately after, another student collapses to the stone ground, groaning in pain after being hit squarely. The brawl turns into a one-sided massacre where the inexperienced freshmen fly through the air, taking a humiliating beating. In just a few moments, the victor stands untouched, surrounded by the fallen bodies of almost the entire class. Attracted by the noise, some clan guards rush to the main gate, not understanding what just happened there. One of the downed boys tremblingly points at the protagonist, desperately accusing him of trying to steal their primeval stones. Realizing the tattletale still has the energy to complain, the reincarnated one simply stomps hard on his back, shutting him up on the spot. Coldly staring at the few who are still standing, he warns that anyone who hands over a stone can leave in peace, guaranteeing that the fate of those who refuse will be exactly the same as those on the ground. However, one of the students refuses to accept the extortion and charges forward, yelling that a lower-tier talent will never be able to defeat someone of a high class like him. Advancing with firm steps, the boy playing hero tries to surprise his opponent. With sharp reflexes, the protagonist just leans his body to the side, making the angry punch whistle past. Clenching his fist with extreme precision, the ex-villain prepares his counterattack. Without a shred of mercy, he lands a devastating punch right in the middle of his classmate's face. The impact knocks out the last resistor on the spot, leaving Fang Yuan to calmly walk over the defeated. To the inexperienced youths, those movements seemed too complex to understand, as each blow was perfectly calculated to cause acute pain or temporarily knock out the target without taking them out for good. All this brutal efficiency is the practical result of 500 years of combat experience being applied against harmless children. Maintaining his relentless posture, the victor faces the remaining students and asks if they will finally hand over the payment. Watching the scene from a distance, the guards are desperate, finding it absurd to allow a student extort his classmates at the school gate, risking someone's end. One of the subordinates turns to the academy elder, asking for permission to intervene and arrest the boy immediately for breaking discipline. The master ignores the guard's desperation, focusing only on the natural combat talent the rebellious student just demonstrated. Assessing the situation, the veteran privately laments that such incredible martial skill belongs to someone with such low magical aptitude. Worried about the place's reputation, the employee insists, asking if the supervisor will really let this nonsense continue before the consequences become serious. Showing coldness, the professor questions the reason for interrupting the fight, assuring him that the boy has the situation completely under control. The master technically explains that the reincarnated one's attacks are surgical, applying the exact force only to knock out the opponents without causing permanent damage. He details that striking the back of the neck would be fatal, but the student intentionally focused on the side of the neck, proving that none of those boys on the ground are seriously injured. Even seeing that the students are only knocked out, the guard retorts, asking if the school doesn't have a duty to treat the injured. Bothered by the boy's audacity, the watchman argues that allowing this mess at the main gate will tarnish the clan's name and stain the master's own reputation if the gossip spreads. With no patience for this excuse, the elder retorts that the fight only offended the guard's pride, as conflicts without fatalities are perfect for forging the competitive spirit of the youth. The professor recalls that all previous classes also got into similar scuffles after learning martial arts, and no one ever intervened. Trying to justify his stance, the employee stammers that before, the fights were just individual duels, whereas now the boy has caused a real widespread riot. Cutting off the flimsy excuse, the veteran coldly states that the real reason for the lack of action in the past was the watchman's pure fear. He explains that with more training time, the students develop superhuman strength, and the guard only wants to stop the protagonist now because he is still using only ordinary physical strength and can be contained. The master puts the subordinate in his place, reminding him that all those youths carry the blood of the main family, while the watchmen are nothing more than mere servants of the clan. Casting a frightening glare, the elder decrees that the guard's loyalty does not give them the right to question the affairs of their masters, no matter how weak they may still be. Desperate, the man bows, apologizing for his insolence, but the professor does not forgive him and fires him from his post immediately. Maintaining his authority, the veteran announces that in 15 days, there will be a new evaluation to appoint the next head of the guard. The news shocks the other employees, as this position guarantees a whole primeval stone per month, making it a golden opportunity coveted by all. Ending the matter, the elder tells the employees to go down and wait for the commotion to end to clean up the mess, and is obeyed on the spot by the new person in charge. Far from there, the extortion continues with one of the cornered students creating a magic blade in his hand and threatening to shoot if the ex-villain takes another step. Mocking his classmates' courage, the reincarnated one reminds him that using magic within the academy's limits is strictly forbidden, encouraging the boy to shoot if he wants to be expelled. The logical threat makes the boy hesitate instantly, staring at his own magic, afraid of the consequences of breaking the school's main rule. Hearing the girls confirm that the punishment is real, the student dispels the spell, completely surrendering to the blackmail. Without rewarding the surrender, the protagonist advances mercilessly and delivers a quick blow. The impact knocks the boy violently against the stone ground. Continuing his work, he goes after the girl who was right behind. The student collapses unconscious with a dull thud next to her classmate after receiving the attack. Completely terrified by the scene, another female student falls to her knees on the ground, trembling. Crying in desperation, the girl begs her classmate not to come closer and to let her leave in peace. Unshakable in the face of her tears, the ex-villain just states his demand, asking for a single primeval stone. Terrified of getting beaten, the young woman hands over all the stones she has in her hand in an act of total surrender. True to his word, the boy takes only one of the coins and tells his classmate to get lost. The action surprises the frightened student, who remains silent, processing the fact that the blackmailer actually honored the deal without demanding anything more. Relieved not to have been beaten, she swallows her tears and flees, running as fast as she can through the academy gates. With the toll collection finished, the protagonist calmly walks through the courtyard littered with groaning bodies on the ground. Suddenly, the younger brother comes running, indignant, and shouts, asking how the protagonist had the nerve to beat up the entire class at the gate just to steal their money.